I'll make a motion to reopen the committee of the whole meeting.
All those in favor, please signify.
We need a second.
Second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Action carries. We will now move to adjourn. No,
You can just
I will
declare us
declare
adjourned.
that it's adjourned. Thank you so much. Okay. All right. On that, then, we will then open up the full board. I can find my agenda. There it is. Okay. All right, so I will convene then the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board here on June 5th. The secretary, please call a roll.
Commissioner Elper.
Present.
Commissioner Menz. Absent. Commissioner Musich.
Present.
Commissioner Olson.
Here.
Commissioner Rucker.
Here.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Here.
Commissioner Thompson. Absent. Vice President Abeni.
Here.
President Forney.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. I'll take a motion then to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second?
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries. And I want to announce that we will be having a closed session at 6:30, and we will also be having a public hearing at 5:45. Okay, on to then reports from appointees.
We have some minutes to approve.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that. Okay. I'll take a motion then to move the minutes for May 22nd.
So moved. Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries. Okay, now on to reports of appointees to outside boards, commissions, and committees. Anybody have anything they would like to share? Oh, my. Okay, well, I have several things that I would like to share. First of all, I'm not sure which order I should be putting these in, because they're not all related to reports from outside committee, but we will be having a ribbon cutting for Upper Harbor on Saturday, the 8th. And the reason why I bring that up is that this has been a vision for something I've been involved with for a couple of decades, and one of those visionaries was Paul Riles. He was one of the lead people in securing funding for our Central Riverfront, and Paul passed away a week ago, over a week ago now, excuse me. And he was our appointee for the St. Anthony Falls Heritage Board. So with great sadness, because he really truly was a visionary of our riverfront, I need to reappoint somebody else, and I'm so grateful that Sally Grand-Secorche, who was one of the appointees, has agreed to fill that spot. So I'd like to make that appointment at this point in time. I'm not sure when to say this, but I'm going to say it now. We had a tragic loss of a police officer, Jamal Mitchell. And the reason why I bring this up is all officers are so important to all of us. Jamal, on his third day of work a year and a half ago, was the one who saved friends of mine from a house that was burning. And that house has been taken down, and it has now become a part of our park system, the Loon Trolley sale. And I think it's appropriate for us to take a moment to acknowledge him with just a moment of silence. So people would respectfully acknowledge Jamal Mitchell, who died in the line of duty. Thank you all. What I understand is that there is a memorial service tentative for Tuesday, June 11th. My condolences to his family. He was, in my eyes, a hero, and grateful for his service. I think I can save the rest for P's and C's. My apologies. And then also I would like to ask the superintendent if he would give us a report. We've had an unusual spring season, and it has impacted our mowing, and I felt that it was important for us to share with you the status of our mowing in our parks. Superintendent Bangara.
Thank you, President Forney and Board. I'm going to, hopefully this is the most updated version here. Make sure I have it here, that there was anything else. Let's see. 1 second here, my apology. I want to make sure I have the right one. Okay. Last minute, so I got it, so thank you. Today was a really big day for catching up. 339 acres is the most mowed in a day this year, mowing that has taken place. We are now up to 88% of park area mowed within 14 days. We started this week closer to 70%. And just to note, the team is working incredibly hard to catch up, and we hope to have 95% by the end of this week. We know this has been a really very visible thing the community has responded to, and I just want to give, we understand that this was something that we got a lot of responses and calls on. Staff have worked really hard to catch up, and you know, we just wanted to share at least where we are currently. And if there's any further questions, we can answer that. We're more than happy to do that, but I wanted to share at least at this point where we are with mowing in our city. And so we will continue to, of course, not only hear from constituents, but to respond to some of the concerns that are out there when they look at their when they look at the park system. And so I'm grateful for, you know, Jeremy and the team that have done some work, and Becky that's back there that's worked really hard to get caught up. And so just wanted to share at least where we are currently. So thank you, President Forney, for asking us to give that report and at least give an update where we are. So thank you for that. And we're open for questions, of course.
Great. Commissioner Musich.
Thank you, President Forney. I do understand that we've had a challenging weather pattern that's left us very, very wet and raining a lot. But I think it would be helpful for the board if we were to be provided with information about what's being done to change the way we respond in wet years to ensure that what's happening now, where we have to play so much catch-up, doesn't happen again, and instead that we try to stay on top of it to the best of our ability. I know we have a lot of tools available to us, so I'd like to better understand what we're doing to not be here next year, should we have another really wet spring. And you mentioned that we're on a 14-day mowing cycle right now. In pastures, we've been on a 10-day mowing cycle. When do we anticipate having staffing levels to be able to achieve a 10-day mowing cycle?
President Forney, Commissioner Musich, I will defer that question to Assistant Superintendent Jeremy Barrick to give a quick report on that.
President Forney, Commissioners. Yeah, we're actively recruiting and
Your
hiring.
mic's not on.
Okay, sorry. Good evening, President Forney, Commissioners. We're actively recruiting and hiring seasonals as much as we can. We are fully staffed with full-time mobile equipment operators on the big mowers. We anticipate that within the next 2 weeks, we'll have as many seasonals in as we can. So there's a recruitment piece to this. We have implemented, and we are working internally right now with a mapping similar to the plowing. So you'll recall our plowing map shows all of the plow routes. There's a public look-in on that where you can see when the route was last plowed. The team's developed something in the last few weeks that does that for mowing with the polygons of where the mowing needs to happen. We're not quite ready for prime time yet. We got to just kind of source that out a little bit more. But the weather, yes. So we've run into some things where we've sent mowers into areas that are in desperate need. They run up against low-lying areas. We've had to rescue a few mowers by pulling. They've been stuck. We've had to pull them out. And so those are some of the challenges. And then in terms of, next year, so the way I've looked at this and talked about it too is there was a time where we weren't the best with keeping our pools open, and we now have a pool public-facing map, and I think we have upwards of 93% of our pools are open as our average each season. And so we used to get a lot of trash complaints. We put trash routes on a map. We started implementing that. Mowing has been kind of the last big domino. This season has really, it's drawn our attention to that, and we're working pretty hard to get this map up and running, making sure that the equipment's GPS systems are active and working so that we can see and monitor and make sure we have staff out. And throughout the system, we know where they are, where they're headed, and what they're getting done each day. So that's how for the past week, we've been tracking how many acres a day have we been getting mowed, and with a roster of who's on which machine and where they were at. I hope that helps.
Yeah, that helps a lot. So with the plowing map, the public was given the ability to give feedback, either that something didn't get the attention it should have, or that there was an area that they thought should have been plowed that didn't get plowed. Will we have a similar feedback tool for people to utilize on the mowing map?
President Forney, Commissioner Musich, and Commissioners, to be determined, but likely. We haven't even engaged on that level of conversation yet. We're still working on what technologies do we have available, and how do we put it on a map and get it there. So I would imagine we would want that feedback loop,
Yes.
but it would come down to feasibility and ease of it. Yeah.
Okay, well, even if it's an enhancement at a future date, I'd love if we could get to that place. It would be very helpful to be able to point someone to a place where they can actually, on a map, tell us what it is that needs to get done. Because right now, it's difficult to get that out of people sometimes. They know very well what they're talking about. But for the rest of us, it can be a little bit challenging to get people to the right spot. So thank you for that update. I appreciate it.
Commissioner Schaefer?
Yes, I just was wondering if you answered the question when you thought it might shift from 2-week cycle to 10 days?
Yeah, President Forney, Commissioners. Yeah, thank you. So our goal is 10 days. That's for neighborhood parks in the MPP 20 program. In the past, when we've looked at the back, looking back on years, we do average that over the course of the season. And so our goal of getting it to 14 days by the end of the week, or 90 whatever 3% by the end of this week, we would keep pushing that to, get to a point of it's 10 days, and we would want 90+% of parks mowed within 10 days. One of the things that's tricky about that average is it is an average. So there are athletic fields that we mow every week, and they're getting mowed within, 7 days. And then there are other areas that we don't, aren't as active and can grow longer, and they might be more of that 10, 12, 14 day. So right now it's kind of the staffing, weather, and it's that launch point of every year.
Okay, so it's kind of TBD. But the other question, I guess, is how many seasonal help are we short at this point in time?
So I don't have that number off the top of my head. I do know that, so we use a combination of mobile equipment operators and park keepers to do this work. We are fully staffed for the first time. Assistant Director Braun told me in her career, we are fully staffed with full-time park keepers. Unless somebody left this week or we lost one, but okay. So this was the first week in 25 years that she can recall having the full allotment of park keepers full-time. Mobile equipment operators, I believe, are down 1 or 2 full-time. And then in terms of seasonals, seasonal park keepers, I think the last number I heard, we were at around 37, and our goal was 60-ish.
I'm sorry, seasonal? You said
Seasonal park keepers our goal was to hire 60-ish, and we're at about 37, 38. And then mobile equipment operators, I believe our goal is to hire 14 or 12, and then I think we're halfway there. Yeah, somewhere around 6 to 8 are on staff. And that's a tricky one because it requires a commercial driver's license, and so it's a seasonal job with a commercial driver's license. Kind of our bread and butter in terms of candidates as bus drivers, so.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you, that's helpful. But I remember hearing about, it's probably a consistent, like you say, it's a consistent issue from year to year. And so I would concur with Commissioner Musich that it would be lovely to have a report at some point about how this is going to change, because I had a lot of complaints, we all did, and people were like, you know what, if I was a resident, I'd be getting fined by the city, or, you know what I mean? They were kind of making these comments like, what's going on? So I just want to see if we can avoid that again. I know we've had a few years of drought, so we've kind of been able to slide under the radar on some of this, but it kind of brings it to a head again when we have a wet spring. But thank you for your efforts in dealing with this unusual situation.
Thank you. And I just would like to also indicate that Victory Memorial Drive was not mowed in time for Memorial Day. And I, as the president, would like to apologize, for that. I just want you to know that it is a part of our integrated pest management policy that parkway is of great significance to us. And for us to uphold that is something I will make every effort to make sure is honored in the future. So I just wanted to make sure that people realize that we are fully aware and we want to address those concerns. So moving along then, we will go to our consent agenda. If anybody would like to move that for me, please.
I'll move the consent agenda as a slate.
Second?
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries. Then on to our planning committee.
Yes, from the Planning Committee, I'd like to move Resolution 2024-95, resolution approving a memorandum of understanding between the City of Minneapolis and Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board for the creation of a park at the new Nicollet, former Kmart, site at 10 and 30 West Lake Street in Minneapolis.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions? Any questions? Not seeing any lights. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries.
Also from the Planning Committee, I'd like to move Resolution 2024-98, a resolution authorizing the superintendent to initiate a process with Hennepin County to consider turnback of portions of East River Parkway within Mississippi Gorge Regional Park that are currently operating as a public road, and to identify funding sources to make required safety improvements.
Second.
Any questions? Any questions? My understanding is that we do not need to do a roll call on this? A turn back?
I think you should, because it's a
Okay. To be safe, let's do that. Okay. If the secretary would please call the roll, I'd appreciate it.
Commissioner Alper,
Aye.
Commissioner Musich,
Aye.
Commissioner Menz, Commissioner Olson,
Aye.
Commissioner Rucker,
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer,
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson. Absent, Vice President Abeni,
Aye.
President Forney.
Aye.
You have 7 ayes, 2 absent.
Thank you. That action carries. To our next.
Finally, from the Planning Committee, I'd like to move Resolution 2024-109, resolution accepting an offer from the Minnesota Department of Transportation to purchase the 28th Street tot lot for no more than $240,000 and amending the 2024 Capital Improvement Program to allocate up to $240,000 from the Whittier neighborhood portion of the Dibble Hornstein Parkland Dedication Fund for that purchase.
Second.
Okay, this I will do a roll call vote as well. Secretary, please call a roll.
Commissioner Alper,
Aye.
Commissioner Menz, absent Commissioner Musich,
Aye.
Commissioner Olson,
Aye.
Commissioner Rucker,
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer,
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson, absent Vice President Abeni,
Aye.
President Forney.
Aye.
You have 7 ayes, 2 absent.
That action carries. On to Administration and Finance.
Administration and Finance Committee, I'll move Resolution 2024-106. Resolution amending the 2024 Capital Improvement Program to allocate $150,000 from the Whittier neighborhood portion of the Dibble Hornstein Parkland Dedication Fund to the 28th Street Tot Lot Park Improvement Project.
Second.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Yes, I just want to thank staff for the previous resolution for working hard to get the reduction in price. I know that was a little bit out of your control, but thank you for your pursuit of that. I was able to meet with the executive director of the new executive director of the Whittier Alliance last week, and they were thrilled to hear that the price had come down. I just want to make clear on this resolution that this $150,000 does not provide any funds for the skate park at this location. That design is still being pulled together right now, but I would hope that, you know, this, as I mentioned 2 weeks ago, this is a park has been the top of our equity matrix. In, I think the year that Susan Dew wrote an article about it was 2023, I believe last year in the spring. So I just really would encourage us to think about how we can try to make that skate park a reality sooner than later. That's my only kind of thing I want to point out now. But I'm thrilled that this is moving forward, and I know it's been a long process for many staff members, so I appreciate your hard work.
Thank you. Not seeing any other lights. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries. On to the next resolution.
I'll move Resolution 2024-107. Resolution approving a 7-year license agreement with Minneapolis Police Department for installation and maintenance of a security camera at the mall park.
Second?
Any questions? Any questions? Not seeing any lights. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries. Well, hurrah, people. We are now on to our unfinished business. And I would just remind people that we have a 5:30 open time, and we have a 5:45 public hearing. So, Director Arvidsson, take it away on our Metro Blue Line extension update.
Good evening, President Forney, Commissioners. I will definitely not get through this in 5 minutes, but we'll see how far we get. I don't think we need a tour of Adobe PDF right now. We need a tour of the light rail line. Thank you, President Forney, Commissioners, for the time to speak to you this evening to provide an update on the Blue Line Extension light rail. I'm going to spend some time this evening going through where that project stands right now as we enter a summer of opportunities for yourselves, the Board of Commissioners, to have more touch points with this project. So this evening, I'm going to give a general overview of the project and talk about the preferred route as currently envisioned. I'm going to talk about the project timeline and those MPRB touch points. I'm going to talk about 2 specific design areas that really directly connect to parks. That's the James Avenue Station and also the Victory Worth Parkway area. I'll give an update on the anti-displacement efforts that are taking place, and then finish up with kind of an overview of major topics and what your next steps might be. And I can't see the actual time clock, so you'll have to signal me when it's time to sit down for a minute.
3 minutes.
3 minutes, okay. So just really quickly about our involvement to date on Route 2.0. Many of you will recall that the Blue Line extension went very far down the tracks on a different route that was going to run at the edge of and through Theodore Wirth Park. And that route became no longer possible. And so the project office had to pivot to a new route. So I'm not going to go back through all of that ancient history on the other route. I'm just really talking about this 2.0 version. Within which we have had commissioner representation on the Corridor Management Committee, which is largely the decision-making body that's convened by the Metropolitan Council. We've had staff representation on multiple technical committees, including what they call the issue resolution teams. And those are groups of staff that come together and really pick at the details of the project. We've done preliminary 4F consultations at the staff level and also Section 106 consulting parties meetings. And just as a reminder, 4F is the park impact law, for lack of a better phrase, and Section 106 is the historic resources impact law. The park board has direct jurisdiction under 4F. We do not have direct jurisdiction under Section 106, but we tend to be a consulting party. And then also we were an active participant on the anti-displacement working group. The most recent time you heard about the Blue Line extension was a presentation to the board almost exactly a year ago. And you'll recall in that presentation, there were some concepts shown for the Lowry Avenue area which included a flyover of the light rail of the park. So just a quick overview of the preferred route. This slide is kind of stolen from their webpage. It's about 13.4 miles of track between Target Field all the way up into Brooklyn Park. Transit improvements are in the heavily traveled northwest area. There's a lot of bus use in these neighborhoods. And this also provides an opportunity to invest in BIPOC communities and reduce regional disparities, particularly in North Minneapolis and in Brooklyn Center, Brooklyn Park. And with that, I will pause.
Thank you. Right, I am going to open up our open time, and I'm going to read our rules first. Thanks to all of you who want to share your thoughts and ideas with us during open time. Before we start, I want to provide an abbreviated version of the open time board rules. All individuals wishing to speak may call in before noon the day of the meeting to be placed on the agenda, or can sign up at the board meeting prior to the start of open time. I will be calling on people on the sign-up list only. Open time for public input shall not exceed a total of 15 minutes, with a time limit to be allocated by myself, the president. Please watch the timer up here to be considerate of others here to speak and stay within your allotted time. During open time, public testimony will be given without debate, and only clarifying questions from the board will be allowed. 2 types of items not appropriate for open time in order to protect the privacy of all individuals are pending litigation and personnel issues. Please refrain from commenting on those specific personnel issues. We will not tolerate discriminatory and/or harassing words directed at anyone, so please ensure that all comments you make tonight comply with the policy. This board made the decision many years ago to operate under Robert's Rules of Order. Under Robert's Rules of Order, the ceding of time to another person is not allowed, so only those signed up to speak may only speak for their own allotted amount of time. We also request that each person provide his or her name and address. And we have 7 speakers, so I'm going to allow 2 minutes each. The first person is Mitch Rossel, and Brandon Burback after that.
Good evening. Yeah, my name is Mitch Rosso. I live on James Avenue in Uptown. I'd like to ask the board to consider opening up the master plan to leave the mall park unchanged between Irving and Knox. Just as a little history, the park staff had public meetings back in 2019 and 2020 to discuss this, and there were hundreds of residents that showed up at those meetings, and they were all very opposed to that. So I'd like just point that out, that the neighborhood doesn't like it. And our petition currently has 780 signatures opposing removing the parking and the streets there. I brought up a few points in the past meetings. I want to bring a few more. A lot of the apartments in that neighborhood were built in the 20s and don't have underground parking. And so the residents rely on that parking, as do most of the visitors during the weekends, our neighborhood is completely full because people that come to visit the parks park on the boulevard, as do my tenants. And a lot of them are, most of the apartments are $1,000 apartments and less. They're affordable. That's something we should be wanting in Uptown. A lot of first-time renters, a lot of young renters. So just want to point that out. Also, up at the east end of the mall, there is a standing wave of homeless encampments, and I attribute that to the lack of traffic up there. And that hillside doesn't get mowed that goes down to the bike trail. Something should be investigated on that. But I'm worried about that happening if they take away the road down on the west end of the mall, that could become an attractive place because there would be no access to that road. And it's threatening for my young tenants. Also, one last thing, the design shows traffic going through the alley behind James and turning onto the boulevard. It's just a little one-way road. In the future, if that's the only way in, a lot of people are going to turn on that road thinking that's what the current road is, and they'll end up going down through the alley, and then they would have to enter Lagoon on a blind corner, and that's a very dangerous corner. So I'd like that reconsidered and looked at from a safety standpoint. So thank you. Have a nice night.
Thank you. Brandon? And then after that is Christopher E. This is Brandon Burback. Brandon, are you here? Christopher E. Christopher, welcome.
I
have visual aids? Can I good evening, Board. Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk tonight. I am Christopher Etz from the Bryn Mawr neighborhood. I live on Cedar Lake Road in Bryn Mawr. I'm here today to bring the board's attention to the poor condition of the paved trails in the south portion of Theodore Wirth Park. Specifically, the area I'm talking about is the area that's around the Eloise Butler Garden. I've been using these trails since I moved into the neighborhood about 25 years ago, and as far as I can tell, there hasn't really been any maintenance performed on the trails in that time, and they've become quite dilapidated, and they're eroding away. Unfortunately, they're now in such poor condition that when rain events happen, they're being undermined, and the bituminous and dirt underneath is being washed into the roadways and into the storm drain and into our lakes. As you can see from the photos in this, that they're quite damaged from erosion. Also, the ski trails that are crisscrossing Wirth Park in the wintertime have damaged some of the trails. And also, at this point, because they're in such poor condition, it's not uncommon to see vehicles, sometimes park police vehicles, sometimes unsanctioned vehicles from the neighborhood riding around in the parkland, making the situation even worse. At the south end of our neighborhood, we have two brand new senior apartment buildings, and I think that having paved trails in addition to some of the other more difficult trails to traverse would be something that the neighbors would appreciate. So I'm just here to urge the park board to consider making the maintenance of existing trails a priority so that they don't become more difficult to fix in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Barbara Johnson, and then after that is Gary, I don't know if that's Speeds, I apologize. Spears, okay. Welcome, Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is this into this microphone, right?
Yep, please.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Barbara Johnson, 4318 Xerxes Avenue North. Just a brief introduction of myself. I served on the Minneapolis City Council for 20 years, but before that, I served for 15 years on the Metropolitan Parks and Open Space Commission, representing the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board. While I was there, we had our first opportunity to get operation and maintenance funding through the regional system. While I was on the City Council, I worked on the park dedication fee, the neighborhood park plan, and also defended the independent park board, which was a challenge at times. People want to take that authority away, and it's a terrible mistake. And I learned that from my time on the Parks and Open Space Commission. What I'm here for today is I just am very distressed, and I appreciate the chair's comments about Victory Memorial Drive. It looks terrible. And we have had, I think, about a 3-year infestation of grub issues. And so there are big patches of dead grass, dirt, and we really need to have communication and understand what is being done about that. The last issue of not mowing the drive was kind of like the coup de grace for neighbors about just the distress that they have looking at that parkway. So I appreciate that you're asking for a report, and hopefully we can get some attention to the board, to the importance of this state historic resource. It isn't just part of the system. It is a state historic resource. And I remember we did a rededication of the drive, and I had a big project in 2003. I talked to one of the people that serve on the city's Historic Preservation Commission who had never been there. So I appreciate your time. I would ask that you listen to this Blue Line presentation, because I'm very concerned about that Lowry station impeding our access to the Grand Round system. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary, and then after that is Mitchell Hansen. And just a reminder, we have a 5:45 public hearing.
Hello, my name is Gary Spears. I live at 3543 22nd Avenue. My family's lived over there for the past 38 years. We're Crow Creek descendants, the ones who were removed by Sibley. And so what to further this, and I've been here a few other times here, is that there's now two names, Oskapa, which literally means a bowl, and Dakota, that you eat out of, and Strong-Hearted Woman, which is Chante Tiza Wian, is the name that we are trying to rename Sibley, which Sibley has a direct connection to us in an evil way, where they removed everybody from the area, they removed the people. So to even that out and to evenly make this fair is that we replace this back to the people that we removed, so they can have their story carry on, and we could stop the removal process of, vanquishing them with an inanimate object called a bowl. And what I did further research on this, which I emailed to the park thing. I don't have any visual aids right now for it, but I did email it to it. They show that in the 1920s, before that, there was a flat part of the park. It's pretty flat. And then the Wasitu, which is European settlers, came and carved it up for personal profit. And if you're looking at some of the things in the email there, you'll see you're standing on Longfellow Avenue facing east, and you can see it where it's carved in a year later. And that makes a partial bowl, which is not really a full bowl. And I do believe that Oskapa is not the right name because that has to do with European settlers carving out the land for personal profit after Sibley has removed the Dakota people. And I believe that Strong-Hearted Woman is the women, which is plural, is the best way to go about it. And I know that we had a meeting last time that the two names kind of came up as being the two names that would replace it, but we didn't have anybody a chance to meet with each other when we had the petition people. So it seems like that's waiting out here, and I'm still waiting for a public hearing. So I'd like to just try to figure out a date and time for that public hearing.
Thank you. Next is Mitchell Hansen, and after that is Roxanne O'Brien.
Hello, Mitchell Hansen, live in North Minneapolis. I sent a data request asking for information about myself as a subject dated 2/15/2024. The next day, someone with the email AnnieLinder916@gmail apparently sent her own data request. And what's extremely disturbing is that the data request office skipped mine, which is by law takes precedent, because I'm the subject of the data request. The data practice office and other individuals also refined the request and rewrote it. The series of email communications between Ann Linder, which happens to be Commissioner Thompson's middle and former last name, is a coordinated process including many NPRB staff and legal that guides the requester towards accessing the information that they sought. AnnieLinder916@gmail.com is not a government email. So either this private citizen who is not the subject of her request was able to access the personal text and email communications on the cell phones of commissioners, or was a commissioner using a personal email, which still does not skip mine in line. Ann Linder's original email reads, "I recognize we might not be able to identify Roxanne or Mitchell Hansen from text threads. We. Ms. O'Brien, which might be pertinent to my story, I would like any text messages regarding this with commissioners." It was sent to Annie Norded and Chad Lauber, I don't know who they are, then marked high importance and forwarded to commissioners, Deputy Superintendent Ringgold, Brian Rice, Dawn Summers, Robin Smothers, and Ann Walder. Commissioners have been notified that I need to send text and any messages from personal emails. The spelling of my name was changed to correct it to the actual spelling, Mitchell with one L, which is completely odd. I'm not sure who Katie is, but she demanded commissioners are required to send all personal communications. I don't believe it's legal to change the nature and spelling of a data request. It was intentionally dated to undercut my 10-day data request to myself, demanding information by the end of the day, Friday, February 23rd. Ultimately, I received my data request back 2 days late and comically incomplete. If Ann Linder isn't Becca Thompson, then you skip my request about myself, which by law takes precedent. If it is, I'd like an answer for how and why commissioners are using aliases, albeit poor aliases, to investigate others. I told you many months ago that Ralph Siebert told tree companies not to talk to me. I have proof via data request of him crafting this fake email and making up lies. They found a version they liked, and Ralph stated, "Ooh, me likey." Where does this end? We're literally just trying to help people. I don't know, maybe Council Rice can respond to this question considering he was a party to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Roxanne O'Brien.
Hello, Park Board again. This is weird. My question is, and I'm gonna leave my 2 minutes for an answer since I know that you guys do answer community. Why was Becca Thompson allowed and supported to do a data request under an alias on me and Mitchell and specifically conversations between us and Commissioners Billy Menz and Becky Alper, and why? I'm leaving my 2 minutes for a response since nobody has responded to my email. I am also here to officially make a complaint against the park board and all parties involved. So who do I need to talk to?
Thank you.
I'm still waiting for an answer.
I'm
Who
sorry.
do I need to make a complaint with? How do you do that process officially?
You want to talk with Dawn over there, please?
Who is Don?
She's right, standing over there, our communications director, if you'd like to chat with her.
Don, do you make complaints?
Thank you very much. Your
Is that
time
where I officially make complaints with Don?
Brandon, Burback, is Brandon here?
Excuse me, can somebody answer my question so that I can make an official complaint?
This is not what open time is.
What is open time for, Meg Forney? By the way, did you get your wallet back that I found at the convention after you cheated your way into the delegate section?
Thank you for your, we are now going to reconvene our public hearing, which is at 5:45.
I know that because I'm in your district.
And the,
And you sat right in
the
front of me
open
and I
time
found
for
your
the-
wallet
the open time.
and
for the-
returned it to you. You're welcome.
The open time is for, our public hearing is for the extended public hearing for the naming of the CPRO site to Parque Monarca. And I am told that we do not have any speakers, so with that then, I will close the public hearing and move on then to our, I did not hear that Brandon was here, so I'm closing then also the open time and moving back then to Director Arvidsson.
Okay, President Forney, Commissioners, I'll continue with the overview of the preferred route. So specifically, as approved by the Corridor Management Committee, the preferred route would move from Target Field to Washington Avenue via 7th and 10th Avenues within the North Loop. It would then travel on Washington Avenue to 21st Avenue and actually cross I-94 on a new bridge that is in line with 21st. That connection does not exist today, so that's a block north of Broadway. The light rail would travel on 21st Avenue, not Broadway, as far west as James Avenue, and then would connect down to Broadway at that location, which is right in the vicinity of North Commons and the Y on Broadway Avenue. And then the train would be center running within Broadway Avenue up to the Victory Worth Lowry area and then on into Robbinsdale. And once in Robbinsdale, it would continue, as you can see from the map, there are stations in Robbinsdale, in Crystal, and in Brooklyn Park. So I want to talk a bit about the project timeline, at least for the remainder of the year, and some of the key touch points where the MPRB would have some jurisdiction. So we're coming up on a couple of key dates in the process. So you'll note we're past the May 31st on the left-hand side of the drawing, where there's a new ridership and estimate update being prepared. And then the next item that's taking place, the next major item would be a release of the supplemental draft environmental impact statement. That's the SDEIS. So that SDEIS is released for public and agency comment. That supplemental draft, the purpose of it is to identify project impacts. There will not yet be any identification of mitigations, but the project impacts will be identified. At the conclusion of that public comment period on the SDEIS, the project office will issue a set of plans that will be used for municipal consent. Those plans are considered to be roughly 30% complete, so sometimes it's called the 30% plans. And that municipal consent set would move through August, September, and into October, where the cities along the line have the opportunity to vote their municipal consent or withhold it to see that project go forward or not. So our key touch points in this process have to do with the SDEIS. So when that document is released, I'll be reviewing it and will help shepherd through the board an official comment letter that would be approved by the commissioners. So SDEIS is at the level where we don't do those comments at a staff level. The commissioners will have the opportunity to comment on that plan. So that's one place where we can begin to make sure that the impacts are identified correctly as they relate to parks and other matters. The second opportunity here has to do with municipal consent. So the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board is not considered a city and does not have municipal consent under state law. Typically what happens is municipal consent takes place, and then sometime, often much later, sometimes a year or a year and a half later, the 4F process is completed. And the 4F process is where you all, the board, have the jurisdiction to choose whether impacts to parkland have been effectively mitigated or not. And it's possible at that time, if you do not concur, to have the project fundamentally changed or slowed. Unfortunately, in a typical schedule, that happens very late, after all the other cities may have already agreed to the line as envisioned, and after the project has advanced further beyond 30% designs. So we have been working to try to bring 4F in line with municipal consent for this project. I recently had a meeting with the Federal Transit Authority, and they seemed amenable to that idea. I don't know exactly what form that's going to take yet, but what I want to say today is I'm hoping, and we should all expect, that during this window of the big yellow arrow, that there will be some kind of 4F action by the board parallel to municipal consent. That is the goal. I can't guarantee it yet. With that, I'm going to move on to talking a little bit about some of the designs that do exist in close proximity or even within parkland. And the first of those is the James Avenue station near North Commons Park. So just to navigate you here, north is in fact up. You can see the train coming in from the right-hand side of your screen on 21st Avenue. It slides through a series of parcels diagonally to get into the middle of Broadway Avenue, and then continues off the left-hand side of your screen, center running in Broadway Avenue. Along that diagonal stretch, there would be a station platform envisioned. North Commons is just off the screen to the south. So if you follow James Avenue, right here, down to North Commons, it's literally right in this location. It is the next block. So we've been working hard to try to make sure that there's a good connection to North Commons from the James Avenue station in a couple of different ways. The bright green lines that you see here are actually off-street bikeways. This is envisioned by the city as being the North Side Greenway, which would be a bike facility that comes down Irving, uses the station area to slide over to James, and then connects directly into North Commons Park and continues south through the edge of the park. So that bicycle and pedestrian trail connection is something we've been working on, and also working to make these intersections as safe for bicyclists as we can do. In addition, myself and also city staff have been advocating for a crossing of the rail at Knox Avenue. There's a lot of high-density housing here, much of it low-income housing, or affordable housing, I should say. And so this direct connection, again, to the Y and also to North Commons feels fairly important. So we're hoping to continue to get additional crossings of Broadway Avenue in this vicinity to connect those neighborhoods north of Broadway to the larger parks like North Commons and Willard that we have that are just south of Broadway. So this is, again, what I'm showing are 30% designs. There's a lot of work still to do, but we're starting to see some detailed concepts emerge. And now I want to talk about Victory Worth Parkway and the Lowry Avenue Station area. This one is a bit more complicated, so I'm going to try to make this as clear as possible, but obviously there's time for questions at the end. I'm going to talk both about land jurisdiction and also the current design. Some of you will recall a year ago, the project office presented some concepts for this area to you. The project office unfortunately couldn't be here tonight on somewhat short notice, but a year ago when they were here, they presented an idea where the train would fly over the parkland, roughly 4 stories above Victory Parkway, with a station on that elevated platform. And your responses, the commissioner responses to that, were roundly negative, I might say, and so the project office has reconsidered their plans. So I do want to talk a little bit about land ownership and jurisdiction, because it's a bit complicated here. So the underlying aerial photograph that you see is Broadway Avenue, right here coming in from kind of the upper right. So our drawing is turned a bit, north is to the left. This is the Broadway Avenue bridges that were recently reconstructed. This is North Memorial Hospital down in the lower left, and Lowry Avenue heading straight upward. You'll notice Worth Parkway comes in from the south or from the right of the drawing, slips underneath the bridges, and turns into Victory Memorial Parkway heading northward. The green area there is the land that was deeded to the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board back in the 1920s for Victory and Worth Parkway. It's a pretty uniform parcel. It's 300 feet wide. And the project office has attested to me that it is fully their understanding that this is park board owned and operated land, not city, but park board through because of parkway purposes. They do understand that this is park board owned land. That's a piece that I've been working with them closely on. However, in the 1960s, MnDOT took an easement from the park board for highway purposes. And that easement exists here in the red outlined line with the cross hatching. And you'll notice that that easement roughly parallels all of the interconnections between Broadway, Lowry, and Bottineau Boulevard, but it extends further south along our parkway, which is a bit odd. The reason for that is that there's a necessity to interconnect state and county roadways. So if you are traveling south on Bottineau Boulevard, the only way to get to Lowry is to circle off here like an exit ramp, use the parkway to this intersection, and then turn onto Lowry. So when this easement was taken, this portion of the parkway was also encumbered by an easement in order to allow for that interconnect. Subsequent to the initial construction of this highway corridor, which used to be Trunk Highway and is no longer, much of this land was turned back to the county. So the Hennepin County currently holds this easement, and there's a tiny little piece right here that the city of Minneapolis owns in order to make this curve of the local city streets. Okay, so one thing we are currently investigating, staff is investigating with the help of Council Rice, is that this easement is described as a highway easement, a trunk highway easement from 1969. The project office believes that transit is an allowable use under a trunk highway easement. They've provided some state statute language that supports that claim, and we are currently reviewing that from a legal standpoint. So I can't opine right now on whether the highway easement holds for transit use, but I think the fact is true that Hennepin County currently does hold an easement over parkland in this location. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the current design. I've got some plans and also some three-dimensional drawings because this is happening in 3 dimensions and it's hard for me to get my head around to the first time I look at it. So I've turned the drawing here a little bit for you. Obviously you can still see Victory Memorial here and Theodore Wirth Parkway moving down through the south. The basic idea here is to keep the train at ground level and to pass the train between the 2 Broadway bridges at ground level, essentially the same level as the parkland surrounding it. So there would be no elevated nor depressed station. And the way that that would take place is that there would be a slight modification to one of these new bridges. Admittedly, that's a recent modification to a new bridge. But in addition, these yellow or orange blocks here would be additional bridge that would extend backward from the existing bridges. Right now, there's a tall embankment here that rises up to the roadway. And essentially, that embankment would become flat. You'd see underneath these bridges, and the bridges would stay high further to the south. That allows the station to slip in between those bridges in about the only spot where the geometrics work to let that happen. And then perhaps the most radical idea, but one worth taking a look at and discussing, is a rerouting of the parkway in this direction around the backside of that station, rather than running it through an under-bridge intersection like happens today. Again, this is a design that is still in progress and there's still a lot to work out. But just know that what would happen here is that Broadway would pass up and over the train, the station, and the parkway. So the train, the station, and the parkway are down on the ground at park level with direct connections to our trails. And then Broadway would be up over the top of it, similar to how it is today. A couple of views of that. So right now I'm standing at the intersection of the, quote, new Theodore Wirth Parkway, looking west on Lowry toward North Memorial Hospital, which you can see in the distance there. To the right, coming off of the screen, is the continuation to Victory Parkway. And you can see a bit of the station rails happening underneath and between those bridges. In this drawing, you can see our pink parkway pavement as kind of a bit of a hint. So I'm actually now looking southward and looking, the Lowry Avenue here is continuing east into the city of Minneapolis with the parkway heading south toward Wirth Park. This is the parkway that would come around and pass behind the station and underneath the bridge. And so the station is shown here in between those bridges before it crosses Lowry Avenue. And this is looking from the station toward North Memorial Hospital is over here on the side. And here's the train, again, staying ground level and then ending up in the middle of Bottineau Boulevard in Robbinsdale. And then lastly, a view as if you were exiting the station underneath some of the existing bridges. So I do want to show the land ownership as superimposed with this particular design. So I've shown here our land ownership as well as the easement, and then how that proposed current 30% design kind of sits within that easement area. So you'll notice right away that regardless of the functionality of the design, the parkway is shown here to leave parkland and then come back onto parkland later. And I have expressed to the project office that that's a challenge that we'll have to address in the future, because certainly to have parkway on land that is not our jurisdiction would be problematic. But you can also see that the station area and the modifications to the bridges are taking place within the easement that they do have control over, as opposed to the flyover area, which certainly exited the easement and crossed parkland directly. The flyover, if you'll recall, went something like this, if you can follow my hand, up over and there was a station elevated within this location. There's some exploration being done on trail interconnectivity. So when we think about the quality of the experience on the parkway, on the ped trails, on the bike trails, this is a drawing that has kind of already evolved. But when you, if you were to ride on a bike, the Grand Rounds Parkway, this would be the bike trail passing through here, touching the station, and then coming up to an intersection at Lowry Avenue, as it does today, but not underneath the bridge, and then on to Victory Parkway. Similarly, the pedestrian trail would follow and then would merge with the bike trail as it does today, and moving on to Victory Parkway. Yes, the elephant in the room is there's an at-grade crossing between the light rail train and the parkway, which is not something that happens in our system today. Something that probably there's lots of discussion to be had about. I would expect that we must assume that crossing would be gated, would have gate arms, and that obviously trains would pass across the parkway as they exit and leave the station. But I will say that, you know, ultimately this design is fundamentally a response to trying to not have a high flyover over parkland and to try to better interconnect the station itself with those trails and park areas that we have right here. That's the motivation behind it with a lot of design constraints. I'm going to move on, and we can obviously come back to a lot of that, but I'm going to move on and talk about anti-displacement efforts. So some of you may know that beginning in early 2022, MPRB staff have participated on an anti-displacement working group. It's been a major concern of the community to understand how light rail can exist in North Minneapolis and the other cities along the line without bringing in a whole new community or without making people feel like they are culturally displaced from where they live, have grown up, and want to continue to live. So this anti-displacement working group was convened by the University of Minnesota, and it involved agency staff sitting at the same tables with community and with funders. And there is a report that was put out. It's available online, and it has policy priorities. That report was available during my presentation a year ago, and it was attached to that board action. It's also available at myblueline.org. Subsequently, Hennepin County has led efforts to really actualize those recommendations. The working group has reconvened a couple of times, but most importantly, there's been state legislation and funding to continue the anti-displacement work and to put some real tangible activities behind that. There's also going to be a presentation to the CMC on anti-displacement efforts coming up at the very next meeting. Council Rice and his team may talk a bit about the legislation, but I will just say that the initial drafts of the legislation left the Park Board out of the conversation around this funding, and that was amended later so that the advisory board for the funding became the anti-displacement working group that had already been established, at which we have a seat. So the Park Board will have an opportunity to continue to be involved functionally in that work. Based on that final work group report, staff have identified a couple of linkages that we feel are important between MPRB's core missions and the anti-displacement efforts. First of all, our land disposition policy is really strong and strict, more so than many of the other agencies along the corridor. We need to understand how that interfaces with potentially changes in land ownership up and down the corridor. And it's possible that there could be advantages for the Park Board owning land because of that difficult to dispose land policy. Is that me? Sorry. I got a beeping. I don't know where it's coming. Okay. I thought it was my insulin monitor. Sorry. And then the second thing would be potentially small business support. We do have commercial tenants. Maybe there's an opportunity for temporary relocations during construction. So that's one thing that we're investigating right now. Workforce programs, connecting our existing programs, of which there are many, to think about transit construction needs and operational needs. We're a major employer on the north side, and so maybe there's some linkages there. And of course, cultural placekeeping and placemaking, we are home to the festivals, the arts activities, all the fun stuff that make people want to live in this community. And so enhancing that, especially during construction, hopefully can be a bit of a stress reliever and give people reasons to stay if they have things to do in our parks. So I think these are opportunities where we can connect around anti-displacement. So to close, and I know this has been lengthy, but to close, I think there's a few things that really we've, as staff, kind of identified as hot topics that we're really keeping an eye on. And in the discussion tonight, I'd love to hear from you if there are others. We're interested in making sure that there's a clear and easy connection between the James Avenue Station and North Commons specifically. How do we connect transit between parks? That is in the Parks for All comprehensive plan, and we want to make sure that that functionally works for people. In addition, connections between neighborhoods north of Broadway and parks south of Broadway. If we sever connections, we will exacerbate the acreage and access disparity that TPL identifies in our annual park scoring. So we need to make sure there's good connections between our parks even as light rail comes through. I think we're also interested in exploring excellent park and transit connection at the Victory Worth Lowry area. We have an opportunity to connect transit to our grand rounds, but of course we have to do that right. So then the next one is thinking about minimal impact or preferably park improvements also at Victory, Worth, and Lowry, which also requires understanding the current and final land ownership at Victory, Worth, and Lowry. If that area is re-envisioned, for instance, we may be able to vacate some of that transportation easement that sits on our parkland right now. So there's opportunities, but we obviously have to be careful, and that's where guidance from you will be helpful. We need to think about the character of the grand rounds for all modes, peds, bikes, and vehicles. And then also the anti-displacement question. How do we reduce the physical and the cultural social displacement, both before, during, and after construction, and what role does the park board have to play in that work? So big next steps for you all. The SDEIS, remember, supplemental draft environmental impact statement, is going to release publicly soon. We're going to help coordinate the submission of official comments, but of course when that comes out, I'll let you know. You're encouraged to read that report if you'd like to. It will be lengthy, but there might be some areas to zero in on because there's going to be some things that specifically deal with parks, and there's going to be a whole lot of stuff that doesn't. And in addition, we're continuing to work with aligning 4F with municipal consent. And if we're successful, that would come before the board in August, September, or early October. So with that, just a couple of prompts. What other major topics should we be watching closely from your knowledge? What comments might you have on the current designs? And are there any process or jurisdiction clarifications that you need? And with that, President Forney, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much for the report. Being this is coming on pretty quickly, I asked for an update for everybody because it's significant. So I will start out with Commissioner Musich, please.
Thank you, President Forney. So in areas where there's existing at-grade rail crossings for other purposes, I understand why we would feel okay adding another one. What I'm struggling to understand is this is a location where there's currently not rail disrupting the grand rounds, and we're proposing adding a pretty significant impediment to moving through this space for people on trails. If you could pull the drawing back up for us, it looks to me like someone's going to have to cross almost parallel to the tracks at one point on a bicycle, and as someone that has some pretty interesting scars from wiping out after my wheel got stuck in a similar crossing in Denver. I'm just baffled why someone would propose a trail crossing in this way, particularly on something that right now is not. It doesn't have railroad tracks. We're talking about adding them. I don't understand why this isn't getting a similar treatment to what we see happening at the Grand Rounds along Minnehaha Parkway going into Minnehaha Falls Regional Park. They added rail there. To do so, they created a green roofed bridge that allows for that continuation of the trail without having people to have to cross. And it's unclear to me why they're not trying to do something similar as they cross Parkland in North Minneapolis. North Minneapolis has every right to unimpeded transportation, just like South Minneapolis does. Having formerly lived near here, this is a really busy trail crossing. There's a ton of people that come through here, and I'm struggling to understand how this is safe, functional, beautiful, all the things that we expect our parkways to be. I don't know if you can shed any light on why they're choosing to leave it at grade and with our trail crossing at such a weird angle.
President Forney, Commissioner Musich, I think I'm reluctant to speak for the project team directly, so I can only interpret the drawings that they have put in front of me and that we've worked on together. I think the motivation generally is to try to not have an elevated station on a flyover and also to avoid a tunnel. And so the at-grade option means that to separate the grade between the trails and parkway and the trains somehow, we have to put one of those things above the other. And with the existing Broadway bridges in place, that's more challenging than at the Minnehaha that you reference. So this is in part a response to try to have things be a little more connected, though certainly that does create barriers and interruptions to the Grand Round system. I do want to clarify the crossing question, though, the bike crossing question. Can you?
Sure, could you hold that for 1 second? So you said you wanted to avoid, they would like to avoid a tunnel here. Is that because of geoengineering concerns? Like, do we know where the water table is and that's driving that consideration? Or is it purely a cost consideration?
President Forney, Commissioner Musich, I don't know why they have not explored a tunnel.
Okay. If we could get an answer on that, I think that would be helpful. Because yeah, I'm struggling. I'm struggling with the at-grade crossing. I mean, I was not in favor of a giant flyover that would be a very just huge visual impairment. But I'm also just not jazzed with this either. So if you want to speak now to the trail crossing piece.
Sure, President Forney, Commissioner Musich, I do know, I think they would have some concerns about a subterranean station if that were to come to pass if there were a tunnel here. But I don't know if that's the only driving factor. I can follow up with them to get more detail on that. My question about the trail was a question back for you. You mentioned the bike trail crossing parallel to the tracks?
Yeah, it looks like as you go past the Lowry Station, heading, is that north? You go across the tracks, and then it goes to the left.
Yep.
In the image. It looks like the crossing is going to be in line with is that a road, or is it the rails?
So the rail is the blue.
Ah, okay. So I'm
And
looking
then
at,
this
I thought
is-
it was the road.
Yeah,
was the rails.
This is the bridge above.
Okay.
So you would turn left
So we
under
cross
the bridge.
them like this
Perpendicular.
versus like this.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's slightly less terrifying than the previous one where all I could think was someone's totally gonna get their bike stuck in there. That's gonna be bad. So thank you for the clarification. I appreciate
Certainly.
that.
Vice President Abene.
Thank you, President Forney. Wait, Mr. Arvidsson, could you pull up the image where there's the overlay of the easement and the realignment of the parkways?
This one right here?
Yeah. I share some of the concerns I'm hearing from Commissioner Musich, but I do appreciate the idea of this realignment seeks to minimize the amount of overlap between Parkway and the light rail facilities. So I think that's good thinking. The other thing is this easement is so interesting to me. How long ago did the county take over this area? If it was the 60s when the highway was there?
1997,
97?
it went to the county.
Are there any other remnant old highway sort of easements out there on parkland that we should be getting rid of now? Because this is actually also somewhat similar to East River Parkway, the cloverleaf design coming around by the campus there. This is what MnDOT did back in the day, and for the reasons you explained. But if we could see if there are any other of these sort of remnant or almost abandoned easements, old highway easements on parkland that we should be seeking to get rid of now before they can point to that and say, well, we have free reign. That would be smart to do. I mean, they probably wouldn't do it because now they'd know. But anyway, but that being said, I would also say that I really do think that having this be the one location where we have an interruption like this on the Parkway is a problem for me, because it's a pretty special place right now. The last thing I'll say is if we end up with a station adjacent, so the other thing is, if something like this were to happen, yes, I like what you said, where there's an opportunity then to extinguish surplus easement on parkland, that's a good thing. But the last thing I'll say is that, this may be a little bit premature, but if there are areas of stations and areas of interconnection with the parkways, I think there needs to be a very clear understanding of the maintenance, including the grass mowing and litter pickup and all of that, because I don't know that it happens. I can think at the campus, some of the stations there, it's up to the university to do the maintenance of those platform areas, I believe. And the other thing I'll say is that there's certain restrictions about working near tracks and all of that that have to be taken into consideration for park board personnel. So, okay, that's it. Thanks.
Commissioner Rucker.
Yeah, a couple questions. Did you guys ever consider having the trail go under the tracks at all?
President Forney, Commissioner Rucker, that hasn't been explored to date, but it could be.
I think that would be safer. In my field, I've been to several incidents where people at ground level with the light rail have been killed or accidents or things like that when it's at ground level. So is there going to be, you say there's going to be, at the crossing, there's going to be arms, bars? And how often will the train be coming through that area?
President Forney, Commissioner Rucker, I would assume there would be crossing gates, though I don't think we're at that level of detail yet.
Okay.
With the drawings. Light rail trains typically run every 15 minutes. Possibly every 10 during rush hours, in each direction.
Okay. Well, I live in that area, and they have done extensive work, and it looks, beautiful on the Grand Round there. I'm just kind of against the blue line coming through there, just because of safety reasons, and the Grand Round.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Yeah, I just want to highlight something that the frequency of trains will cause a disruption to the residents in these homes in the area. From the Southwest Light Rail, obviously, we had also the disruption of animals and habitat, and they made a special cause with the direction of the horns and the bells that will come through, but there'll still be noise every 10 minutes, every 15 minutes, whenever they come through. So I want that to be clear to the community, to not forget about that. Noise was something that came up later in the Southwest Light Rail, and I don't want that to be a surprise to the community. I would like to concur with Commissioner Musich about looking at a tunnel. We've gotten a lot of experience with tunnels now, and maybe the train station can be, not on level, at some point, not right there, maybe a little back, a little forward. But to me, that would be the best for the residents. That'd be safest for the ground round. That would maintain our being able to really highlight the ground round like we want to. But I would really like to understand why they haven't thought about that, if it was primarily cost or what other reasons. Thank you.
Commissioner Olson?
Yeah, I've been to this area quite a bit and looking at it on Google Maps, and I actually have it aligned. I mean, it's a confused, tangled mess as it is right now. So, I mean, them trying to fit in a light rail station, I mean, it's an incredibly hard task, and particularly with trying to mitigate some of the things. Safety, I'm not too concerned about, crossings and disruptions and folks driving through. I mean, light rails as far as safety compared to high-speed roads is kind of negligible. But my one question though, so it looks like, so if we were to reroute, you said that that could have a potential for a lot of issues. What are some of the issues that just come right off the top of your head, having a parkway go on land that is not ours?
President Forney, Commissioner Olson, I think the main issue that, and this is maybe my administrative bent, but my main issue is the parkway not existing on land under the park board's jurisdiction. I can't really think of another instance where that is the case. The parkway does cross busy roads. It doesn't really cross any train tracks, but it also does stay on parkland. So that parcel onto which the parkway is shown here is also subject to a highway easement that sits over a multitude of other landowners that were also sort of taken back in 1969. And those underlying landowners still would have rights to that land were the easement vacated in some way. So I've already asked the project office to consider how the land rights would accrue if this were ultimately the final solution, which I think we're a long way from that determination. But it's a complicated layer cake of land rights that we do need to be thinking about now. And for me, that is a major issue.
Okay. But as far as day-to-day operation kind of function for our constituents, maybe not that much of a headache, just kind of on the back end if we're thinking administratively, yes, though. Okay. Potentially.
President Forney, Commissioner Olson, I mean, I think empirically speaking, you would be adding a transportation crossing to the grand routes, right? So there is a crossing of another transportation route there at Lowry, and you would be adding another one in this vicinity. So presumably that would disrupt some of the flow. But to what degree is that offset against the transit interconnectivity is something that's hard for me to weigh in on right now.
Okay. Well, yeah, then, just to kind of second Commissioner, Ruckers, if it's maybe cheaper or safer or easier to tunnel the parkway or the trail system under the station, perhaps just because it seems like it would be a smaller tunnel than other things, maybe that could be worth exploring. I know, yeah, we have experience with tunnels, but also tunnels are scary and they are expensive, and it could easily balloon public dollars that would be coming from our constituents. And yeah, I would be very excited, and Commissioner Benning kind of mentioned this, and you kind of mentioned this, of the easement, just south of the tunnel here, if the parkway were to wrap around, it looks like we could gain a good amount of space that's currently taken up by roadway. And I don't know if that's like a storage facility or something. Yeah, that we could create a substantive park that would help mitigate some of these kind of issues that we're talking about, displacement. We're talking about residential concerns. If we're getting a new asset, it could create kind of a net neutral situation for folks here. Although folks are getting a cheap, convenient, and safe form of transit, which is something I think we should recognize. So, just I think overall, what I would definitely do, look at what would be possible if as far as regaining land and creating a more cohesive park, and then also, I'd be interested in tunneling the trail or the roadway so that it is cohesive. Maybe that's cheaper than doing the whole train or the station, so.
Oh, Commissioner Schaefer, and just to remind everybody, we have a closed session at 6:30, so please go ahead.
I just had one quick question. You had a previous map on a different location. Is this particular station the only place the line will cross Parkland? The other one you were just showing in reference to where it hit to connect to North Commons, correct? Was there any?
President Forney, Commissioner Schaefer, yes, this is the only location that the line will actually touch a park resource.
Thank you for confirming that.
Yep.
Oh, Commissioner Olson, do you have a? Oh, your light's on. That's okay. Well, thank you all. I am the appointee for DOIRT, so I really, really appreciate at the CMC. I really appreciate hearing your thoughts. I also need to comment that in Southwest LRT and every other line that has been put together, we were the last to come to the table. And this is huge that we have, we were able to weigh in earlier. And so please continue to share with myself, with Director Arvidsson, your thoughts and everything, because this will be in perpetuity, and how it impacts, our parkland. What we have as far as our jurisdiction is significant, and for us to use it wisely. So with that, I will then recess the full board for us to go into a closed session.
President Forney.
We should announce the purpose of the closed meeting.
Technically, the
So we
closed
don't
session
recess,
is
it's
in
a
separate
motion
committee.
it's a separate meeting?
It's a separate meeting.
Oh, okay.
It's a committee of the whole.
Oh,
So
so
we
I
need
need
to
to
convene
convene.
the-
Okay, sorry, okay. So we've recessed the full board. I would like to call to order the board for a closed session. Excuse me, gotta get my glasses on. A closed session under Minnesota Statute 13D.03 to consider strategy, please, commissioners. The strategy for the labor negotiations with Local 363.
Do we have to
Secretary needs to call
actually
the roll.
open the meeting and then
First open the
do a
meeting.
roll call for the meeting? Yeah.
Right,
please.
okay.
Yep.
So would the secretary please call a roll for the purposes of our committee of the whole?
Commissioner Elper.
Present.
Commissioner Menz, absent. Commissioner Musich.
Present.
Commissioner Olson.
Here.
Commissioner Rucker.
Here.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Here.
Commissioner Thompson, absent. Vice President DeBenny.
Here.
President Forney.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, that passes. I will then take
I
a
would like
mo-
to move to adopt our agenda.
Second?
Thank you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries.
I would like to move to close the meeting for the purpose of discussing strategy for labor negotiations, Local 363.
Second?
Thank you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries. We then will adjourn. We will recess to committee of the whole.
This meeting, we have to.
Okay, I'm gonna
Do you have enough
Okay,
people?
we have a quorum. I have to reconvene then the committee of the whole here. And I will ask for a
I'd like to
motion.
make a motion to reopen the meeting.
Second?
Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? And action carries. I will then now adjourn the committee of the whole, and we will go back and I will reconvene then the full board. And where were we at? We were at the blue line. Did we complete all the questions there? Commissioners, I believe that we were finished with that. Sorry. Go ahead. Oh, sorry, Vice President Benny.
Thank you, President Forney. I do have one more nagging question that I can't let go of here. But I see Mr. Arvidson's not in the room, but the other option, I heard maybe tunneling the parkway. If there's tunneling, I mean, I think this would be, I don't know if that makes sense as much as tunneling the train. I know there's a longer way to go, but also I don't understand, is there, oh, good. Is there a reason why the train can't align really up at the bridge level and just be part of the bridge deck? It would mean reconstructing the bridges, but is there a reason? And that's so different than the flyover concept. Yeah.
President Forney, Commissioner Benny, I don't know that that's been explored, but it's, I guess, another option that I can float forward. I don't know what design flaws there would be or design benefits that would provide.
Okay.
We can
There are
explore
other
it.
examples of that. I mean, if you look at the Minnehaha Creek Trail underneath 35W, that's a pretty wide bridge, and it's not that far from the Nicollet Avenue Bridge, so, and it doesn't, I think, take away from that area, although definitely you don't see a lot of things growing underneath there. And there is a waterway underneath there, which is different. But there's also a road and trails, so, yeah, if that could also be explored, I think it would be worth at least discussing. Thanks.
Not seeing any other lights. I then will then turn to petitions and communications, and I'll begin with Commissioner Elper. Sorry, question. Okay. Oh, is there reports of officers?
Yes.
Oh, my apologies. Okay, so, sorry.
No problem.
Superintendent Van Gore, please take it away.
All right, thank you, President Forney and Commissioners. As again, I always tell folks that we're going to go through the strategic directions that this board has really adopted for during the term in the 4 years, and so I'll kind of go through each one of these again. So let's start with strategic direction A, act boldly on our climate future. So Theodore Regional Park parking study. Is this up on your screens?
It's not showing.
It's not showing?
We have black.
I see it there, but I don't
I
see
don't
anything
know.
on our screens.
We're not seeing it.
Our screens are black.
It's just black.
Squares. And they are on. No signal detected.
Let's take a quick pause here, because I want to make sure.
For those of you in the back, we now have a no signal detected.
My garden, yes. Then leaving, I decided to cut.
Sorry for the delay, we'll get there in a second. If we don't, then we just can read through it, but the visual makes the difference, right? We'll see if we can get it.
Nothing.
I think John's here.
There's something.
I definitely don't want to see myself. I'll do a
You're
little.
looking good there, Superintendent.
All right, we got it. I think this is one ahead, but I think we're there at least.
Oh, okay.
There we go. Thank you. Visuals are all good. Okay.
Nice work,
so,
IT. Thank you.
Thank you. Theodore Worth Regional Park Study. We conducted a parking study scope. This is a look on how parking is currently utilized and analyzed, which guides us with possible solutions, grants, to help us fund those solutions. The parking study count, 3-day event that took place over Memorial Day weekend. The parking lots observed were the Theodore Worth Trailhead parking, the Theodore Worth Golf Course parking, Worth Beach parking, Worth Lake Picnic parking lot, northeast of the beach, the pay lot at the Quaking Bog, and the Eloise Butler parking. The study, the parking study materials then that were used were traffic tubes, parking lot cameras, online surveys with QR codes, flyers, and yard signs. These materials were placed throughout the park, and they help us to do these things. Understand how users were traveling to Worth and where they're coming from. Understand how users perceive and experience parking at Worth. Find out if there are any thoughts, comments, or concerns. Once the study is complete, within the next week, and obtain the traffic data from quality counts from the 3-day event, we will begin to analyzing the data. And again, this is Act Boldly for Our Climate Future. Strategic Direction B, cultivate each community's place and honor cultural traditions in Minneapolis parks. Memorial tree planting at Loring. Memorial trees are living tributes that symbolize life, growth, and resilience. This is why more than 100 members of the Loring Park community honored the life of Robert Scaft by planting a tree in his honor. Scaft, a professional dancer and founder of Seven Squares Farmers Market, worked at the Oak Grove Grocery near Loring Park. He volunteered at the Loring Park Garden and was a beloved neighbor and a friend to many. Forestry staff were on hand to assist the family and friends with planting the memorial tree. Strategic Direction C, implement quality youth and intergenerational programs. Movies and music kickoff. Music and movies had a successful kickoff on Memorial Day at Lake Harriet despite the weather. That was included with hail, rain, and lightning. Returning and existing staff mentored new staff to prepare for the strong season. That's an understatement. It's big. It was smooth sailing as both shows began on time and were able to pull off full sets. The opening act was Anti-Skip Protection, a rewind to the 90s and beyond, and was enjoyed by the 500 spectators. The second band, a longtime series regular, the Belfast Cowboys, entertained between 1,500 to 2,000 spectators. That's just absolutely amazing. Grateful to the spectacular music and movie staff for their hard work to get the season rolling. Interesting part of this, I was supposed to be on stage speaking about the band shell and welcoming, and then we decided, we thought, oh, it's going to be a terrible rainstorm, and it turned out to be absolutely amazing. So great job by staff, and wonderful to see people back out at the band shell and enjoying the music series. So thank you to staff. Strategic, let's make sure I'm on the right one here. Yep. Strategic Direction D, care for park assets to meet evolving needs and practices. Safety update, plumbing shop. The plumbing shop took on a safety concern that was brought to their attention by Al Starr's maintenance team at Riverside Park. The existing plumbing shut-off valves were difficult to reach, and that had made operating the pool safely on a day-to-day basis almost impossible. The plumbing crew quickly acted to improve the pool piping by relocating the shut-off valves. You can see in the before image, the valves were located out over the pool pit, and in the second image, you can see the valves are now accessible so you can operate them safely while standing outside the pool pit. Might seem like a very small thing, but it's incredibly important to our staff, and we're grateful to plumbing. They do their piping, I call it like artwork. When you see the copper pipes being done, they're just fantastic. And so thank you to the staff, and thank you for obviously caring for our assets. They do wonderful work. Conservation Corps Minnesota And in Iowa begins the 2024 season with the Park Board. The Park Board is again hosting Conservation Corps crews this year. The cruise consists of a full year crew of 3 to 4 members working from mid-March to mid-December, and a summer crew consisting of 4 to 5 members working from June to August. Conservation Corps crew members are enrolled in the AmeriCorps team of service to gain work experience in green industry careers. Upon completion of the program year, receive an education award through AmeriCorps. The Conservation Corps crew's primary focus will be on restoration work in the Park Board's managed natural areas, with a focus on invasive species, removal and planting and caring for native species. Very proud of that, and thank you for that. And for President Forney and Commissioners, that's all I have. And if you have any questions, we'd love to be able to answer it. So thank you for your time, and again, very proud of the work we do within the organization. Thank you.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Yeah, I just was wondering if we could get an update on the scooter intern. I think they already started, maybe how that's going. Have we had good success in reporting violations?
President
Yeah,
Forney and Commissioner Schaefer, let me send that out to staff. I don't have anything off the top of my head to report, but we can send something out to, I'm not staff, sorry, commissioners, by the end of the week.
Seeing no other lights, we will go back to petitions and communications. I believe we're at Commissioner Olson.
Yeah, just a quick thing. So my buddy and I, a couple of weeks ago, got a canoe and paddled the entirety of Minnehaha Creek. And it was kind of fantastic, especially to think as I was going down it in the context of, you know, the watershed and our partnership with the watershed. And really along the vast majority of the route, it's really quite fantastic in how it's integrated with nature. Still around Knollwood and the kind of Hopkins area, it's a little rough, but then you get into, you know, the Meadowbrook and around the hospital where that new project was, and it's really fantastic what they've done, and so it just really makes me excited to continue that partnership, and so that's really cool, and because it's such an asset to be able to do that in an urban environment, and also, you know, kind of a thought I had during it was, last year, I would not have been able to do it, even thought of it, because it was of the drought. And so just to kind of reiterate to my fellow commissioners and our staff the importance when we're planning to take into account the variance of rainfall and the variance of what we are going to be dealing with as our climate continues to change. I understand we know that importance, but it was just kind of a stark lesson. And also wanted to give a quick shout out. So at the end of the route, my buddy's car earlier in the day broke down, so we weren't able to park it right next to where you exit there. And so we were going to lug the canoe about 6 blocks to his house. And while we were doing that and struggling to do it, there was a wonderfully generous Minneapolitan couple that invited us to their backyard to borrow their kayak wheels, and that allowed us to get there at the end. And so I just want to give a shout out to those folks. Minneapolis, nice, is still a thing, and that was an incredible help, and so thank you to them.
Great. Commissioner Rucker.
Pass.
Commissioner Music.
Thank you, President Forney. I'm excited to hear that my colleagues are checking out paddling down Minnehaha Creek. It is raging right now, so please be cautious if you do decide to do that, and wear your flotation devices. I also wanted to mention to everyone that Sibley Park's wading pool and playground are largely complete. It's been a real long haul. It was over multiple seasons. I'm so thankful for everyone's patience as we worked through the challenges of building things on filled wetland, as is so common in our park spaces. But yes, so those are done. They're going to be open to the public, and we'll be having a ribbon cutting there June 14th at 5 p.m. So if you're excited about seeing a cool new wading pool, trying out some playground equipment, I do like to try out all the slides at every playground opening that we go to, you know, just to make sure that they're still as fun for the adult children in all of us, as they are going to be for the kids. So I'd love to go for a slide and swing with all of you if you're available on the 14th at 5 p.m. Thanks.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Yeah, I'll just give an update around the Suline Gardens. Becca Grossman, our community garden gal, purchased and then delivered dirt to have a bunch of above-ground plots at Whittier Field in Whittier Park the last Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of last week. So most all of the people that want to be able to garden this season can still do that there, and they're also considering a city-owned lot at 28th and Pillsbury, I believe. So I just want to really say thank you to staff that I know worked hard on all of that to make that happen for the gardeners in a time of transition. So I was able to go help 2 different days for a couple hours, and it was a lot of work. But it's going to be worthwhile in the end. So it was just appreciated all the effort on that. And just looking forward to having a safe 4th of July. We had a community meeting around the new changes around Bede-Makaska for the 4th, and all the community excitement about what the park street reach team and the park police have planned. So I think that's going to be positive, as well as what's happening downtown. And Kenwood Park tennis courts are resurfaced, as well as Stevens Square basketball court. So I have a lot of happy constituents right now emailing me saying, we're thrilled that this investment is being made in maintenance.
Vice President Benny.
Thank you, President Forney. I'll just say that I was also at the community meeting about the July 4th planning, and the park board team was great. They really hosted it. There were 3 neighborhoods, Linden Hills, and then east and west, Bede-Makaska. Those are the 3 neighborhoods. But the other thing I like about the park board's approach to this is they're also saying the community's engaged, and they're also going to be doing things. The community's also part of this. It's not just what the park board's doing for them. It's a whole big plan, and it's really great. I also, the same night I attended Lyndhurst Environmental Committee meeting, and they had a lot of questions about the Lyndhurst plan that's in the adopted master plan, and maybe some concerns about the playground equipment, because it's a little bit on pause as the money's on hold now. So I'm giving that some thought, how that can be understood or addressed possibly, and so on. So, and then the last thing I'll say, I really liked Commissioner Olson's story of canoeing down the creek, and it is a really great year for doing that. I mean, I've never done it, but I would love to. Okay, but the other thing is, if people can sign up, especially if they live around there, anywhere in that watershed, the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District has an email that they send out that talk about all the elevations at the Grays Bay Dam, and when they choose to actually release water to store more water in Lake Minnetonka and so on. And it's really interesting and very careful and thoughtful operation of that whole system. So sign up if you're interested. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Just a reminder, everyone, the Upper Harbor ribbon cutting is this Saturday. I will not be attending because I will be in Alaska. So please channel all my positive energies, because it is such a monumental thing. I'm just so excited about it. By the way, I've tubed the creek many a time as a kid. Anyway, I wanted to report about I thought, how did we put it, I think, a good vibe meeting with the mayor regarding our budget. It really was very collegial, positive meeting. First of all, I have to do a huge shout out to our finance director, Julie Wiseman. She is incredible, and her answering the questions, one of them was about employee vacancies, and it was kind of like the city staff had a blank stare of, you do something like that? Anyway, so we're the pros in this gang. Also, just for you to know, the mayor has grown to appreciate our park system even more, being the fact that he has a daughter that he takes to the park system quite often. The park system is why he came to Minneapolis. So now that he sees the benefit to his daughter, we are really quite blessed to have that, I guess is the best way to say it. And the other thing is, I reiterated to him that his support of our employee retention, I agree wholeheartedly, and that is a high priority. We will be pausing, we will be deferring, but we will not be abandoning our core mission. And to me, I'm so very proud of it. So, gang, I'm going to leave you all, and I'm off, like I say, to Alaska. I will see you in Seattle. And just for everybody to know, what is it, the 22nd? The commissioners from Vancouver, which is the only other independent park board, are coming down to meet us. And I hope that as many of you can join us in that rare occasion. So anyway, I will now call the meeting adjourned and bring these flowers to our secretary. Thank you.
All right, I will now call to order the Legislative and Intergovernmental Committee. Secretary, AKA Flower Person.
Flower girl.
Flower Girl, would you please call a roll?
Commissioner Benny,
Present?
Commissioner Alper,
Present.
Commissioner Menz. Absent, sorry. Vice Chair Rucker,
Here.
Chair Olson.
Here.
You have a quorum.
All right, may I have someone please move the approval of the agenda?
So moved?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. Agenda is approved. And may someone please approve the minutes, please?
I so move.
Or move the minutes. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes have been approved. So we have one item on the agenda today, and that is a presentation recapping the 2024 state legislative session. Quite a fun one. Pamela, welcome to the podium.
Thank you, Chair Olson and commissioners. Okay, I'm gonna pull this up. Here we go. It's never a dull session, but, okay. No. Sorry. You get rid of this part. Oh, here we go. Okay. And we, of course, have an incredible team, and Frankie Johnson spent an inordinate amount of time at the legislature every day, tracking everything. And Brian also, where is he? Oh, right here. And Brian Rice, our consummate lobbyist, outside the chambers all the time, and then Tom Workman right here, our Republican lobbyist, also joining us. So Frankie is going to do the slideshow, and we did a brief, recap last board meeting, but we wanted to give a little more context to it.
Okay, I will run through the slides that we have recapping the 2024 legislative session. Frankie Johnson, work as a contract lobbyist for the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board. This year was a supplemental budget year. The state legislature passed a series of omnibus subject matter bills, several of which were rolled into a tax conference committee report and passed as one bill just before midnight on the last night of session. The 2025 legislative session convenes on January 14th, 2025. Next year will be a budget year. There's capability, and the legislature may decide to do a smaller bonding bill since that did not make it over the finish line this session. The first highlight that we have in the Human Services bill is $5 million from DEED, the Department of Employment and Economic Development, funding for the design, development, construction of the new Cedar Riverside Recreation Center to serve the largest immigrant population in the state. Funds are available until June 30th, 2028. And that passed in the Human Services Bill. In the Omnibus Transportation Bill, which was one of the several bills rolled into the tax bill, there is $1 million for MPRB Parkway Design, Engineering, Construction, and Reconstruction. These funds are available until June 30th, 2027. This funding is significant in that the state has not funded parkway reconstruction in the past, and we will pursue additional parkway funding in the future. The bill also includes $10 million for the Blue Line Light Rail Transit Extension Anti-Displacement Community Prosperity Program. The board membership was amended to include members of the Anti-Displacement Working Group established by Hennepin County and the Met Council. This does include the Park Board. For the liquor bill, that was passed within the Omnibus Commerce Policy Bill and contains the exemption from the covered 25-seat requirement for obtaining a city-issued liquor permit for all MPRB properties. The City Council Intergovernmental Relations Committee adopted a resolution for the special law yesterday, June 4th, and the full council will take it up on June 13th. Included in the Omnibus Environment Bill was significant funding for community tree planting grants. There is $3.188 million from the general fund for community tree planting grants to the Met Council. This is a new Met Council community tree planting program that will fund tree planting in cities, counties, townships, and implementing agencies, and would be available until June 30th, 2026. There's also an additional $1.4 million from the Parks and Trails Fund for tree planting in the Regional Parks and Trails System, which is also available until June 30th, 2026. Priority for awarding grants must be given to projects removing and replacing ash trees that pose a significant public safety concern and projects located in a census block group with a supplemental demographic index score in the 70th percentile or higher within the state. And this funding is all for trees on public property, no funding for trees on private property. The miscellaneous items included in the Environment Omnibus Bill is $500,000 from the Parks and Trails Fund for fishing piers and the Metro Regional Park System, a statewide program, the Extended Producer Responsibility Program to collect, recycle, and reuse packaging and paper products, and a state salt purchase report and reduction goal. In the Legacy Funding Bill, funding maintains the 40-40-20 split between the Metro, DNR, and Greater Minnesota Parks and Trails. From the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund, Burger Fountain received $200,000. The Parks and Trails Fund allocated an additional $3.623 million in fiscal year 25 for an updated total of $29.167 for Metro Parks. The Park Board will receive approximately $800,000 extra dollars from that additional appropriation. There's language in the bill that requires regional park implementing agencies that charge a fee for activities or rental equipment to submit a report to the Met Council for opportunities to participate in activities and rent equipment at free or reduced rates. The Met Council will submit a legislative report on this topic by February 2025. LCCMR funding. In 2024, the Park Board was awarded funding from the Legislative Citizen Commission on Minnesota Resources for Shingle Creek aquatic and shoreline habitat enhancements at $1.1 million. We have 3 projects requested for 2025, up to $1 million for citywide shoreline erosion mitigation and habitat enhancement, up to $250,000 for wet meadow restoration at Nokomis Hiawatha Regional Park, and up to $250,000 for prairie savanna restoration at Minnehaha Park South Plateau. And the meetings are coming up this summer where they'll review and rate projects for funding for 2025. Copper wire theft. This was included in the combined commerce and cannabis bill. Beginning January 1st, 2025, the bill establishes a $250 licensing fee for selling scrap metal copper and creates a scrap metal working group through the Department of Public Safety to discuss copper metal theft and share non-proprietary and non-privileged information related to prevention, investigation, and prosecution of metal theft crimes. This exempts licensed professionals such as architects, professional engineers, land surveyors, landscape architects, geoscientists, and interior designers. There are exceptions. The first Friday of the months of April and October of each calendar year from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., scrap metal dealers can purchase up to $25 of scrap metal copper from individuals who do not have that copper metal license. Bonding corrections bill, this was passed earlier in session. It included language for the Upper Harbor Terminal to clarify that the Park Board will receive $6 million and the city will receive $9 million. This is from a 2023 appropriation. The revised language will allow the Park Board to move forward in executing our grant separately from the city for the park project for the Upper Harbor Terminal. Pell road changes were included in a labor omnibus bill, which was rolled into the tax omnibus bill. There are provisions modifying the Public Employee Labor Relations Act. Among these is a data practices change stating public employers would be committing an unfair labor practice if they fail to provide unions with information that is relevant to enforcement or negotiation of a contract within 30 days for information relevant to contract enforcement, or 60 days with information relevant to contract negotiation. Unfinished business from the legislature. Bonding bills and cash capital investment bills. Both the draft $980 million bonding bill and the $71 million cash-only capital investment bill, which passed the House but did not pass the Senate by about 30 seconds before their midnight deadline, included $6 million for the North Commons Park. No regional park money was passed either. That is the end of our presentation.
Awesome. Thank you, Frankie. Does Pamela or Brian, do you have any follow-up, any additional details you'd like to add before we go to questions?
Yeah, Chair Olson and Commissioners, I wanted to thank some of the commissioners that were really helpful at the Capitol this year, including yourself. And Commissioner Schaefer worked really diligently and was really helpful on securing that burger fountain money and testifying and having other people testify with her. That was very helpful. Vice President Abeni was really helpful on, we didn't get it, but it was heard and was included until the end in the tax bill that got very small, on Emerald Ash Borer assistance to cities. That would have been really helpful. And Commissioner Chair Olson also testified on that issue in the Senate, which was very appreciated. And I also want to thank our planning staff that were really accessible and really hopeful with last minute, language changes and really critical information that we all needed at the Capitol to assist us. So I'm very grateful for that as well. So I don't know if you have any questions or.
Yeah, if I could thank Pamela, really, and Pamela did a great job, and Frankie, Tom, really the whole team. And I guess what I'd like to emphasize just a couple things. This lobbying relationship with the legislature is probably the second most important partnership this board has, other than with the city council. In the annual or the final report, I always include on the back kind of a spreadsheet that goes back to when I started representing the board in '84 about, I call it a score sheet, but dollars per category in either bonding, LCCMR, payment in lieu of sales tax, O&M, other programs, legacy programs. It's really pretty significant dollars. If you quantified it this year, it's about $17.7 million that we received from the legislature this year. $5 million for the New Cedar Riverside building, which really we have Representative Knorr and Senator Dietzick to thank for, and really they push that. While I included under bonding projects because we had that as an ask. Representative Knorr was able to use his good offices to get a target from the administration and the leadership and got that we got $3 million last year. The onus will be on our planning department to move that ahead, but that's really another down payment for that project. Really, so many things happened with increasing the legacy dollars. I think that's something that this board, Commissioner Musich knows a little bit about, but that really goes back to Mary Merrill Anderson when she was superintendent, and this board committed to getting the additional sales tax for parks and open space. And, you know, the park board now is looking at getting, $6 million a year, I guess to check the number, from that program, and that's just so important to us. This board didn't have the capital resources to plan for, we could get capital for the regional system, but renewing and refreshing it, having that commitment there year after year is just enormous. As well as we talked about the O&M thing. I mean, I forgot about Barb Johnson was going back to the 80s on the Parks and Open Space Commission, and we advocated for that. She led the effort on that body to get parks treated equivalently to the DNR parks, and that program is continued. And then all the good work, Adam Arvinson leads up our applications for LCCMR. Frankie's already been tracking that, so has Pamela. Really, there's a lot of areas where the board goes to work on, and it really helps you carry out your mission. But when I started, none of those things existed. But it's really taken the backing of the board to do that. Building out the staff, having Pamela there full-time in-house makes it much more easy to track this and get things done. And we were just so close. I mean, literally less than a minute on North Commons. And that really is a testament to what Representative Lee did and making that a priority. I mean, we were in a select group out of the $71 million, almost 10% of it came to North Commons. And it was heartbreaking not to have that happen. But if it wasn't for the Park Foundation, you know, I kind of go back to the meeting we had at the Lopet earlier this year where we did bring up North Commons. Senator Champion was there. He committed to helping us. The Park Foundation was there. We had President Forney is gone, but Commissioner Benny and Meg and other commissioners talked to Frank Hornstein and Scott Dibble about getting state money. This is the first time, well, not the first time. There was a time way back when we did get money for the James I. Rice Parkway, but Senator Dibble's committed to making this a more recurring thing for our 55-mile Grand Round system, and we absolutely need it. You know, this board is really finally committed to doing something, working with the city, so that's very encouraging. And at that meeting, Scott and Frank committed to do that. We're losing Scott; he's retiring, but he did such a great job for us. Frank, excuse me. Yeah, Scott, stay there. They're our guardian angels. But so there are a lot of really good things that came of this. I mean, you know, Commissioner Schaefer, this is the first time we've got Arts Legacy money for the Berger Foundation, because there's so many great things this system does that touches everyone's lives. So it was very disappointing that night not to get a bonding bill, not to get North Commons, not also to get money for there would have been Metro Regional Park dollars, and it's a real disappointment. But even in that disappointment, there were a lot of really good things that happened. And I would encourage this board and future boards to just keep developing your agendas the way you've had it, and keep developing those partnerships, and just stay at it. I mean, that's really going to be the way that that we can succeed. I mean, this board did prioritize the Emerald Ash Borer issue years ago. I know there's criticism all the time, but this board's been talking about that issue for 15 years at least, saying this is a problem. The state is recognizing it, did recognize it in the environment bills that got passed, and so there's a lot of things to be proud of. It could have been better, but these short sessions or the even year sessions are usually known for what doesn't happen than what does happen. They're usually never pretty, and this one certainly wasn't. The Senate melted down. I've never seen that in 43 years of watching the legislature, but it happened. You know, just one point, because President Forney talked about the opening the Upper Harbor Terminal. we came up with this issue where our staff, they were bidding out or needed a contract. I don't know if Cliff Swenson is here, but we had to get a contract, and we went to MMB. We went to basically the bursar's window and said, hey, where's our check? And they said, oh, you know, this language says that it's a grant to the park board and the city for $15 million, and it doesn't break it down. Well, it's always been known, but we literally had to go to Senator Pappas and Representative Lee, and Fu calls me up at night and basically says, what the, you know, why do you need this? And I said, well, we have a contract. We're ready to go and redevelop that land, those 19 or 13 or 12, depending on the shrinking acreage. We've got a contract. We've done our work. We're ready to go. The city is a little bit behind on it, and, you know, they're still in line. So we separated it. I mean, we had to go back and amend an old bill and get everyone in the world to sign off and get the Republicans to sign off so they didn't think it was a fast one or anything like that. And $6 million gets noticed. I mean, a couple $100,000 gets noticed. So that was really good work by Pamela. Our staff alerted to us. We kind of crashed in and talked to the John Marty's thing, and it created a big hubbub, like, what are they doing and why is this happening? Because you had to get it. But we got it done. And, you know, I mean, curiously, this thing on Saturday, the city's kind of driving the bus, but guess what? It's going to be on park board land and to celebrate the deal. But that's because, you know, we really work hard in making these things a reality. So, you know, thank you, Chair Olson, for supporting us and coming over and testifying and sharing your knowledge. That was very helpful in getting these things done. So I'd give us a pretty good grade for the session. It could have been better, but I don't know. What did your favorite singer Cher say, Al? If I could turn back time, you know, we could fix things, but we can't, and so we're here today.
Well, thank you. I mean, your efforts are really a boon to our organization here, and it's hard to imagine many organizations as effective at the Capitol as ours is. You said, you know, something like 17 million was the total kind of assets we returned. I mean, the total budget for public safety this year was like 9 million. You know, the total health budget was like 8 million. So we're doing, you know, pretty well. When the Apple was not too big this year, and a lot of groups are trying to get a lot of bites out of it, we got a pretty sizable bite. And yeah, I mean, the bonding's unfortunate. It would probably be good at some point to have an update on, you know, North Commons funding and kind of where that stands and what we need to do in the future. But, you know, that kind of looked a little doom pretty early on when the GOP was, you know, tying it to equal rights amendment stuff, and it just gets tricky towards the end. But yeah, you know, I think there's a lot of excitement around a lot of issues. You know, the ash trees, I think there's going to be a lot of traction in future years. I think we saw that from a lot of the reps and senators we spoke with. So thank you. Commissioner Schaefer.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you as well. I had one question on the follow-up that we heard some rumblings about a bill that would affect bonding requests and repeat bonding requests related to maintenance. If you could fill us in on that, if you think it's dead or if it's coming back next year?
Excuse me, Chair Olson, Commissioner Schaefer, that did not pass. There was language in the bonding bill. It kept getting either, we kept doing better every time there was another iteration of it. We were able to talk to particularly Senator Pappas. Again, you know, Pamela was great at it. Both Frankie and Pamela did a great job, because normally we're there Monday mornings. And normally I'm there for years and years, but they set up the pension commission at the same time, so I had to be in another part of the building. But all of the park agencies worked on that. So the short answer is we don't have to worry about it now. It didn't pass. And if it had passed, I think we had enough flexibility to avoid that. But I think it's, to Commissioner Olson, Chair Olson's point, a lot of people are asking for a lot of money, $7 billion in requests, and the legislature is trying to say, how can we screen those out? And one of these remedies was that, because we keep building things, but we also have to maintain them, and that was the issue. We did track that in the session. That was another thing. There were a number of other things we could go on and on, but I know Bangor is telling me to keep it to a bumper sticker, so we had some other issues. We were fighting with the city on, pedestrian malls, the old Elwell law that would have changed potentially. The city went in and tried to change a 120-year-old law and redefine it. They weren't trying to harm us, but I'm saying, hey, leave us alone, on that part of it. And they did, so they worked out on that.
Chair Olson and Commissioner Schaefer, that language, we did work really hard to get it. It started off as a replacement fund language, which have been very prohibitive. It was amended to become a preservation fund language, and it looked at CIP planning would qualify for that, but it was, I think, a 10-year CIP planning, and I think we do 6 years. So there were some things that would have still been challenging, and like Council Rice said, that language wasn't adopted, but it could appear again, but we were pleased that it was amended to at least get to the point where it was.
When our last request there was that of course, when they went through it, everybody lobbies and the DNR got it themselves exempted, and we made the case, hey, we're the state parks in the metro area, so if you're going to exempt the DNR, you better exempt us. But we made progress on that issue.
Commissioner Abedi.
Thank you, Chair Olson. Thank you. And it's actually been fun. This has been, I've really enjoyed my associations with this part of the work. It's been interesting because I've never done anything like this before. So I think that this committee is doing well. And I think that, of course, this is a well-oiled machine out here, looking at the team that goes to the Capitol every day for months on it. So thank you for that. But I also really do want to give credit to, I think that we made some good changes to our legislative agenda. I think it's a cogent agenda. And there were many things, I think, in there that sort of catch the attention of the legislators, and I think that's excellent. The other thing I would say to colleagues, I've been able to attend a couple of the bonding tours, and they're fast-paced and they move, but it's a chance to talk to people that are on the infrastructure committees or which committees are coming through. And also I talk to people I don't know, I don't recognize and I don't know. And I think we can be ambassadors for this park system because, look at this fine-looking group of people here. So, and then the last thing I'll say, I was actually at the meeting with the mayor yesterday with the executive team that was there and President Forney, but because I'm a member of the BET, and we gave a brief update on essentially the Parkway ask and where we were, and the staff working together on advancing the new pavement maintenance strategies that we're going to be doing. But we were able to say, hey, also to honor the agreement, in our agreement work from the preceding year, we said we would actively look for other sources of money to fund Parkway reconstruction, which is not something that PV 001, the budget line item for paving, funds. So we were able to say, hey, we got the first start on that. And so that felt pretty good to be able to say that. So that's it for me. Thank you.
If I could add just one thing, where it triggers it really, one of the keys to this, I think, is your relationship. I mean this, the commissioner relationship with the legislators. And why did we succeed? We succeeded with Representative Knorr and Senator Dietze because they really wanted that center. And we've pushed it. We've got a plan. We've worked on it. And that effort goes back to Phyllis Kahn in 2014, getting $200,000 to do a plan and then getting it renewed and getting people involved. But it's 10 years, to get us to that point. But having those legislators seeing the value of this park system makes all the difference. Same with Dibble and Hornstein. They've been our guardian angels. Or Representative Lee, now we've got the project going just outside our building under the BNSF bridge, the Upper Harbor. I mean, those are the things that are really key because you love this park system, but so do our legislators. I mean, we went to Commissioner Musich's representative, Emma Greenman, first bill. Well, she's close in your district. She carried the bill on the, never carried a liquor bill, but now she's on the news and her constituents want to, whatever, drink beer in Lake Nokomis. But that was important. I mean, Commissioner Schaefer is working with Frank Hornstein, We'll have the Burger Fountain and now the Hornstein Plaza or something because of all that work. So It's all
Yeah,
good.
I mean, parks are popular, and I think politicians on all sides of the aisle recognize that when they fund parks, they get political wins, and I think that's a message that we've been able to strongly push. One final thing we wanted to bring up here. So we had kind of earlier last year been working on potential cannabis policy for our park system and kind of waiting to see what was developed at the state level. Other than some stuff from the commission, from the department there weren't many changes. So we're kind of back to, each jurisdiction deciding kind of what works best for them. So in that vein, I've been working with President Forney and staff to kind of develop a process and language around how we can monitor and take action around that substance that fits our park system and is administratively efficient and all those good things. And I believe there are, Secretary Ringgold, you might have some updates for us on what might be coming forward for us in the future here.
Thank you, Chair Olson. Yes, so what I'm anticipating is a couple of things. One, community engagement plan that would come forward in the Ps and Cs. And then really what it's shaping up is that we're likely to bring two things in front of the board. One is a revision of our tobacco policy, which is a board-approved policy that would include cannabis in it. And that would be really focusing in on whether it's vaping or smoking, but something that would generate smoke or, kind of substances in the air. That was really what that would be. And that is a policy which does not have the ordinance. It does not have the petty misdemeanor associated with it. So that's one piece that we would, I think, be trying to bring through the public process and bring to commissioners. The other piece is a little different, and that's actually the sale of THC products at either events or concessions. And that probably sits a little bit more like an alcohol sale type piece. And so as we have seen, cannabis has been something where in some cases it kind of looks like tobacco, in other cases it kind of looks like alcohol, and I think that's what we're experiencing in the feedback we've received to date from commissioners. So I think you would see probably us bringing things forward to you to consider in kind of those two different buckets moving forward.
Does anyone have any questions on that? All right, well, thank you. With that, I will now close the Legislative and Intergovernmental Committee. Adjourn the committee.
Noting the time is 8:07, I'd like to call the Planning Committee to order. Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Elper.
Present.
Commissioner Olson.
Here.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Here.
Vice Chair Thompson, absent. Chair Benny.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Would somebody please move the agenda for approval?
I would like to move the agenda, please.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Great, we have an agenda. There's one set of meeting minutes to approve. Would somebody move the minutes, please?
I will move the Planning Committee minutes of May 22nd, 2024.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
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 Opposed? The minutes are approved. Okay, we have one item on the agenda, an action item. Would somebody please move the resolution?
I will move Resolution 2024-116, resolution granting temporary construction and permanent easements to Metropolitan Council for Metro Transit's use for B-Line BRT stations at Lake Street and Dean Parkway / West Bede-Makaska Parkway at Lagoon Avenue, and East Bede-Makaska Parkway located within Minneapolis Chain of Lakes Regional Park.
Thank you. I would like to actually have a presentation on this, and so we can have an opportunity to ask questions too. So maybe Christine Downey come forward.
Good evening, Chair Benny.
Hi, Ms. Downey.
This is basically, I just wanted to give a short overview of where this project has started and where we are now. I was not involved, but from 2019 to 2021, this NPRB staff participated with conversations with the project team for the Beeline BRT project, and they also had reviewed and shared comments regarding the construction documents at that time. So in October of 2021, which it's my understanding that was the previous board, staff presented the 4F process and got approval from the board at that time. And then for the past, 6 to 9 months, staff has been working with Met Council to negotiate the agreements for the permanent and temporary easement agreements for these parcels. This is, I believe this was something was presented previously. This is the route of the Beeline BRT, and it obviously starts east in St. Paul and then ends roughly just west of Bede-Makaska. This is a depiction of what the typical Beeline station would have. I again, was not necessarily involved in the 4F approval process but this is my understanding of what the stations would typically look like at these locations. Obviously, they would be upgrades to what is there actually currently. So I just wanted to give sort of an overview of the aerial of the two parcels that are just north of Bede-Makaska, well, actually northwest. So this is at Dean and Lake Street, and the parcels on 1A and 1B are located on either side of Lake Street. These are, again, just a depiction of where the platforms would be on either side of Lake Street. And then the other parcel is located at basically Lagoon and I would say it's east Bede-Makaska Parkway. This is an aerial of that. And again, just a depiction of where the platform would actually be built or actually improved. And that is the end of my presentation. I don't know exactly if you need more detail, but that's from my point of view and as the real property administrator, that kind of deal with just the easement portion of it. So I just want to provide some little bit more context.
Sure.
So I do have Emma Patuta here, and also she can answer any if you have some questions that sort of lie outside of that.
Yeah.
So, and we also have staff, from Met Council here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Yeah, my questions were actually around more about the fee calculations. Okay. So there were permanent easement and temporary easement fees, and there was a reduction for increased ridership in the fee amount. And it was, I think, now I can't read my own writing because I don't have, but I think it's $70.8 thousand. And so I was wondering what that idea is about and maybe what policy it might be related to that the park board has.
I would say we started out with the policy that was established with our land policy that was just promulgated last year, right? So that starts out with the quantitative calculations of the fee, and it's sort of in the background, but I do have here. It would start out with the actual original amount, which easement fees without betterments were $193,000 roughly.
Yep.
And then there were infrastructure betterments that were quantified. So we'll say quantitative betterments. Some things can actually have a dollar amount attached to them. And then the ridership, from my understanding with Adam and with Emma, that this was like our first experience or exposure to this type of betterment, more qualitative. So there are sometimes ones that don't necessarily have a dollar amount attached to them. And this is sort of our first exposure to sitting down and trying to be thoughtful of how things like ridership and the number of visits, the increase to our regional parks, how that would be quantified in terms of a betterment. So I'll again have Adam and Emma here to answer any questions, and that discussion involved both of them, and then also with assistant superintendent, so.
Yeah, okay, that's great. Yeah, that's
Sorry.
quite specifically what I was wondering, because
Apologies.
it's framed as increased ridership, but not increased park visitors. And so I'm not sure, and maybe if there's something in the land policy. Now, I know we talked, I think actually Mr. Arvidsson brought up earlier how the land policy or the comp plan, does prioritize transit access to parks, and I support that. But I'm wondering, this can be expressed a little bit more what the thinking is here? Because I think, especially if this is a new idea, we may be establishing a precedent, and I want to be sure that I understand.
Certainly, Chair, what committee am I in? Chair?
Planning, it's me.
Chair Benny. My apologies. Yes, this is a new idea, and it's one that is hard to tangibly quantify, because not every rider is going to be a park user. And so we're trying to suppose some portion of that increased ridership that is likely documentable and forecastable. Some portion of that will move into the parks. And then once they do, there's some tangible benefit to the parks, most notably that we can count them and get additional funding from the Met Council for increased visitorship to our parks. But connecting those dots A to B to C can't be done empirically. So what we are attempting to do is to recognize that the ridership is increasing significantly, but that we don't want to take credit for all of that. And so we've suggested that there's a 50% benefit, in part because the ridership increase is so significant. We didn't want to go all the way to 100% benefit because not all of those people are park users. But yes, presumably we are setting some sort of precedent here. Staff is recommending that we recognize some betterment benefit by the transit interconnection, and this is our best idea in terms of the number, and it's clearly an opportunity for the board to differ with us.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Yeah, I had one question around the design. You know, last year we worked really hard on the new bus stops that were coming along Bede-Makaska Parkway down by our shed. Sorry, I'm not more specific on the name. To make some concessions that they were building a pretty big bus stop on, parkland. And they did do some really new concessions for us. I'm just curious if, obviously this is the same scenario and this was, approved by a previous board, but is there any wiggle room for us at this time to make sure that all of these bus stops are really going to be compatible with one another and honoring kind of that use of parkland? Some of the issues that we negotiated were like the next trip signs, I think, were going dark at a certain time, or the lighting was bird friendly. Yes, Emma probably knows the specifics, and I believe there was some looking at permeable pavers, some things of these sorts. I'm just curious if there's any carryover that we can negotiate at this point with this design.
Chair Benny, Commissioner Schaefer, thank you for that question. This was the previous board, so some of the questions that you had asked during the E-Line project didn't come up during this project, but I will note that a couple of differences. One, all of these bus stops currently exist, so we're actually building upon existing bus stations, and they're just improving existing stations, where the E-Line, I'm sure you know, are new stations. So that conversation kind of took a little bit longer, and there's a little bit more negotiating with that. I will note that they did work with us on, they needed to add a retaining wall on the stop on the south side of Lake Street, and they did work with us to make sure that they avoided the large growth trees that were over there, and I believe they also added some additional trees. So I mean, there was conversation to make sure that we felt good about the final design for the stations.
Great, thank you. That's really helpful. And yes, I guess I have a question around this easement fee reduction. I mean, Emma brings up a good, Ms. Pachuta brings up a good point in that these were bus stops already. Were we not counting the visitor count at these previous bus stops? And then why are we counting them now? I guess that would be one question I have. And the second point I guess I'd like to make is that our regional system is tremendously underfunded, right? So yeah, it's great. We're going to get some increased visitors in our count. But for us to reduce the easement fees, I think is not something that I would support, particularly when we're setting a precedent in this case. And I'm happy to hear more about my first question about, did we count bus stop visits on the previous, since they're at the same location?
Chair Benny, Commissioner Schaefer, we're not strictly counting bus stop visits. So we're counting when someone enters the park space. So today, if someone disembarks from a bus and walks out along Lake Street to the commercial areas, we don't count them. If they get off a bus and they walk over to Damacoska, we do count them. So we are counting today those transit riders who happen to then become park visitors. By the projections here on the screen, the number of transit riders disembarking here is likely to double. And so we expect that a doubling of the people we're counting now getting off of buses and moving into the park, that will double as well. So that's partly the justification for suggesting an easement fee reduction.
And I understand that, but I also think that bringing more influx of visitors to our park is what we want, but it also brings an additional stress on our natural resources. And so I would support not cutting the easement fees in this case.
Commissioner Alper.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to say that I'm really excited about this change that's coming along Lake Street and to these locations at Damacoska and really close to Lake of the Isles. The BRT system is way better than our regular route buses. And I just want to make sure that commissioners know that part of what makes it better is that it's more frequent. They're typically bigger vehicles where the buses, you just walk on, you pay beforehand, so you have, they're sped up because they don't have to wait for people to pay on board. And then they're also, the station design has more amenities, it has more information. So I really see this as a betterment to our park system, and I'm in support of the way that the fee was calculated. However, I do recall that we had, way back when, I believe it was at Dean Parkway and Lake Street, that we had a resolution coming through working with the county, and there was an amendment that just came to mind. And way back, I think it was like the first month or second month of our time as board members, and it had to do with the design and layout of the street. If I'm recalling, they were doing some signal timing improvements. And just to say, my whole point is that this easement fee would be moot if there were fewer lanes on Lake Street. And certainly there are a lot today. There have been crashes at this intersection. People have died at Dean Parkway and Lake Street, and that would solve this. We wouldn't need to do this at all if the county, because I believe it's a county road, was willing to reduce the number of lanes. So I'm just wondering where the conversation is at on that topic, if that's even part of the discussion.
Chair Benny, Vice Chair, is that right I'm not sure. Just Commissioner Alper, my apologies. I unfortunately wasn't involved. I have no knowledge of that particular resolution, and maybe someone else does, but I unfortunately have no way of tying it back to even be able to answer the question. My apologies, but I I could potentially find out if you'd like, but I
Yeah,
unfortunately do not know.
that would be great. If we can, I'll try and dig it up. And I think it's worth looking into more between now and our next meeting, given that it's in the planning committee tonight. You know, granted, I know we're seeing this already for construction, so maybe it's too late, but certainly there's a lot of right-of-way here, and it would just be a pity, quite frankly, to lose green space when there's plenty of space just in the road. So that's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Commissioner Olson.
Yeah, just real quick here. Yeah, just a bit off that. It's just funny. My wife and I, we went to Punch Pizza in Crispin. We walked there, and then we're walking back, and we crossed at this exact area, and we were remarking how quick the light is and how wide the road is. And we're like, gosh, if we were older, this would be really hard. Anyway, as far as to the easements, the betterment, I think it is fine to take that into account. I was actually, as far as completely anecdotal, but while we were walking across, I saw about 4 folks waiting in a not too well shaded shelter there. And so I think having better access there, saw lots of folks utilizing the skate park, actually, around 10 folks there, and lots of folks using that North Beach as well. So I think this would be a really good, strong access point. And there's really a lot of new development in that area as well. It's become far more dense than it was in the past. And so having a really kind of visible, open transit station that folks that all along this corridor could use, I do think is a betterment. I think it's okay to set this precedent. I also think in regards, because this specific, they're kind of at the peripheries of our park parcels here. They're not exactly, they're right up, they're right directly abutting roads, so they're not exactly, and the one that's closer towards Uptown is kind of isolated as well. So it's not like they're generating a lot of value in and of themselves at this moment. So adding these kind of nicer stations that we know folks will use. We've seen BRT and other sections of the metro have increased ridership by multiple degrees. So I think we can infer that this will lead directly to more folks being in the vicinity of our system. So I'm in complete support of this.
Thank you. Commissioner Schaefer?
Yeah, I just want to clarify, I'm supportive of the B line. I'm supportive of the bus stops. I'm supportive of more visitors to our parks, clearly. But what I'm saying is that I think the logic of this going forward is suspect. Does this mean now, with continued Southwest Light Rail easement fees, that we're now going to take a reduction on their easement fees because we're going to have thousands more visitors coming to East Cedar Lake Beach? I just really don't think this is a very good direction without being grounded in some strong policy. It seems arbitrary. It seems a little kind of like an idea to give them a break. And I'm all for giving people a break when it's needed or appropriate, but our regional system is completely not funded to the level that it needs to be. And we're now going to be bringing more visitors. So great, we need to get more number count, right? We want to have a higher number count, but unfortunately that number doesn't help in the gap at all, right? We have more visitors, but we still got the gap. So I feel like this is opening a can of worms from my perspective, but I'm thrilled the bus is coming. I'm thrilled of relooking at any designs we may have opportunity to look at again as far as lanes, et cetera. But I can't support this direction.
Thank you. Okay, and so I have a couple more questions then. This is a dumb question, but how long is a permanent easement for? It's permanent, right?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I'm sorry, Chair Benney. I'll be honest with you, part of the reason why it took so long to actually arrive at some agreements was some of those questions. So one of the questions regarding permanent easement is when the party no longer has need of that particular space, should it go back to the park board? Well, that was one of the things we actually put in the agreement. So if they no longer need it, it will basically go back to park use. So that is, although permanent means permanent, our agreement also says that if they no longer need the stops, for whatever reason, it will basically come back to park.
That's great. Okay, so, but essentially, this is the one-time payment for permanent land use. And then temporary fees go to one place in the organization, and permanent easement fees go someplace else. Where do the fees land in the organization? Because they're not operational dollars, I believe.
I'll let Director Adam.
Okay, thank you. Yep.
Chair Benny, we've got tag teaming professionals for you all on this topic. So permanent easement fees go into the land acquisition fund to replace the land that's presumably directed away from parkland. And temporary easement fees go into the planning division general budget, which helps fund primarily staff time for some of these kinds of projects that don't otherwise have funding directed to them.
That's a good idea. Thank you. I will say that before I call on Commissioner Musich, that I think Commissioner Schaefer said it well, and in a way I agree with. Of course, I also totally support these transit stations and transit, mass transit. I was excited about the things on Richfield Road or whatever that's called through that side of the lake. But what I do worry about here is this is a little arbitrary. And I mean, being a nice partner is one thing, but 50% out of the gate, that's a very, very big number. I just don't see being able to support that. Commissioner Musich.
Thank you, Chair Benny. I'm not on this committee, so I appreciate being given an opportunity to speak. I'm going to share my thoughts on the fee discount as well. I don't think 50% is appropriate in this instance, or really any instance where we're granting permanent easements. Our land acquisition fund is severely underfunded for the amount of land acquisition that we have mapped out within the city, particularly along the riverfront. There are not a ton of opportunities for us to replenish that fund or add to that fund. This is the mechanism we chose to do that with. And I don't think we should be hindering our ability to do that, particularly when we're giving up land. And to speak to why the roadway is not getting narrower, that argument was made many times in many meetings and gained like no traction at all with people that had the ability to make that change. So I think it's important for us to continue to stress that this is a very busy place for people not in cars as well as in cars, and the current structure of that road is incredibly dangerous. It encourages speeding, and someday I hope that we have enough support amongst our colleagues at other levels of government to make that change so that it is a safer and more pleasant park experience for everyone as they move along that transit corridor. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Any other comments? Okay, I do think this needs a roll call, but even if it didn't need a roll call, I'd like to do a roll call vote. Is that okay? Okay, Secretary, would you take the roll on this one?
Commissioner Alper.
Aye.
Commissioner Olson.
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Nay.
Commissioner Thompson, Vice Chair Thompson absent. Chair Benny.
Nay.
You have 2 ayes, 2 nays, and 1 absent.
So that means it doesn't pass right now, right? Yeah, okay, so that does not pass. Okay, that's the last item on the Planning Committee agenda, so I will now adjourn the Planning Committee.
At 8:34, I call to order Administration and Finance Committee. Secretary, can you do the roll call?
Commissioner Musich.
Present.
Commissioner Olson.
Here.
Commissioner Schaefer,
Here.
Co-Chair Thompson, absent, Co-Chair Rucker.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Can I have somebody move the approval of the agenda?
I will move our agenda for this evening.
See no lights. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? That passes. Can I have someone move the approval of the minutes?
I will move the Administration and Finance Committee meetings of May 22nd, 2024.
See no lights. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That passes. Can I have someone move the first resolution, the only resolution for today?
It is with great joy that I will move Resolution 2024-115, a resolution amending the 2024 Capital Improvement Program to allocate $10,303 from the Winona neighborhood portion of the Dibble-Hornstein Parkland Dedication Fund for completion of shoreline stabilization and lake access improvements along the south shore of Lake Nokomis, located within Nokomis-Hiawatha Regional Park.
Well, I see there's a light on for discussion. Commissioner Musil, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Chair Rucker. As many of you know, I helped found the Friends of Lake Nokomis, and a number of years ago, they reached out to the Park Board maintenance team about a section of the shoreline where people were using it as an informal access point. And that was causing some pretty severe erosion along the lakefront that was imperiling the stability of one of our trails. The Friends of Lake Nokomis advocated with the People for Parks Fund and the Nokomis Neighborhood Association, as well as people that live around the area, to help fundraise money to make this happen. So thank you, Friends of Lake Nokomis, and all the small donors that gave to this effort. Many thanks to the People for Parks Fund Committee for nominating this project for funding, and for the Nokomis Neighborhood Association's support of the use of these funds that are here before us tonight. This will improve water quality by not eroding more of the lake shore into the lake. It will also give people a safer way to access the water with their boats and small children. And yeah, hopefully it means that our trail is not going to fall into the lake. I'm very excited about that piece personally, because it is hard for us to get those fixed once that happens. So I'm super excited that tonight we're taking some proactive steps to address this very popular but troubled lakeshore entry point.
Seeing any, no more lights, no more discussion. Take it to vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That passes.
Awesome.
At 8:38, adjourn the Administration and Finance Committee.
Fastest committee meeting.